session to order at 9 a.m. At this time, we have the invocation and pledge of allegiance by Chaplain Cameron Newman.
Psalm 3:5 says, I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. Please bow your heads with me and let us pray. Father God, we come to you today in the precious and priestly name of Jesus Christ. We adore you, Lord, for the great and mighty things that you continue to do. We praise you in anticipation of things yet to come. We seek vision, clarity, and truth, Father God, and ask that you continue guiding and strengthening us, that in your perfect mercy and grace, you would uphold us with willing spirits. Lord, bless the leaders in this room. Father, give them wisdom as they go about the duty of administrating the city of Lynn Haven. And remind us, Lord God, that all concepts of truth, justice, honor, nobility, compassion, and mercy are nothing but imperfect reflections of a perfect Father's love. Prop us up, Lord, with a bold and courageous spirit. Allow us to be the light on the hill that you have called us to be. And Lord, let peace reign supreme. We pray all these things today in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Please stand as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chaplain Newman. This time we have our public commentary. Remember to address the chair. Give us your name, address for the record, and limit it to 3 minutes, please. Public commentary.
Mayor, members of the commission, good morning. Mayor, I'm here to talk to you today. And I'm here because I have written to you twice, and you haven't had the courtesy or the professionalism to write me back. So I have to come here and take everybody's time so we can communicate. A lot of the people in Lynn Haven, including myself, are concerned about the safety and security here in the city. I've received a ton of messages regarding this expressing concern, so I'm not the only one. We continue to have problems in the city with transients coming in, disrupting the peace. The situation is not getting better. I see in the agenda you have a discussion on Airbnbs today, and it indicates to me that perhaps we don't really understand the problem. The problem is not the Airbnb. That Airbnb building that sits across the street from my house does nothing. It sits there. I would change the color, but it doesn't do anything. The problem is the people that come in transient and feel no responsibility towards the community, and they come here and disrupt. Getting worse, as I mentioned, more recently we have a situation where someone tried or threatened to shoot somebody. I've been here in Lynn Haven for 20 years on property. The situation is getting worse. Never seen it like this. The primary job of the executive, your job, sir, your primary job is the safety and security of the citizens. Concerts on the park, they're very nice. You want to give away trees? That's very nice. Please continue to do so. Safety and security, non-negotiable. Gotta happen. That is your job, sir. You volunteered to do this job. I'm going to ask you to please do it. Thank you.
Thank you. In regards to that, hold on, Mr. Torres. In regards to not responding to your emails, I actually consulted with the city manager who did respond. So, which my response, no need to speak. My response would have been the same. So, after consulting with her, she did follow up with you, which is what my response would have been. The reason we put this on the agenda is because you did contact us. And so I followed up with her and said, let's put this on the agenda for discussion so that you could be here to hear the discussion. We discussed this on Friday extensively. We discuss short-term rentals, not necessarily the house itself, but those that are actually living in those residences to see, is there anything that we can do outside of the limitations that are put upon us by the State Department, which we've talked about last year. So that's why this is on the agenda today, so that you can see that we really are concerned and making an assertive effort in regards to the safety and security of all of our citizens here in the city of Lynn Haven, and that we're not brushing your um, concerns under the rug. So that's why we took the time to put this on the agenda as a discussion item. So we discussed it Friday. We'll also be discussing this today so that all of Lynn Haven could know what are our parameters, what we can and can't do as it relates to short-term rentals. We've also had the city attorney as well as the chief of police to look at some things and some possibilities of what we could possibly do. Now, moving forward is something that we'll probably have to put an injunction on or look at that would affect all of the citizens of Lynn Haven and not just target short-term rentals in general. So that's why I did not respond, because you already had received a response, which would have been the same as mine. All right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. I was just giving you a response. Have a good day.
Hello, Jennifer Mercury, 233 Harvard Boulevard. I'm in the county, but my address is Lynn Haven. One, I have a question. Is this the sole comment period, or will people be allowed to comment after item 19 is
There will
discussed?
be a time of comment for the quasi
Okay.
judicial. So if you are here for the quasi judicial comments, I would ask that you would keep your comments until that time.
Okay. I might not be here. Can I go ahead and comment? I have to be somewhere at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay. I understand. I've done some research. The proposed Grease Pro development on the corner of Highway 390 and Harvard Boulevard is understand they have the right to develop their property as they see fit, but I would like Lynn Haven to commit to what is stated in their comprehensive plan, and that is the protection of neighborhoods and preservation of neighborhoods. This is a high volume facility that will definitely negatively impact the surrounding neighborhoods. It is going to present a traffic issue. This is already a very dangerous intersection. There is the possibility of a light at some point in the future, but right now it's dangerous getting in and out. The proposed development is asking to deposit cars onto Harvard Boulevard at an area that is already congested most of the day. So what's going to happen is people are going to turn and go through the neighborhoods. This is already an issue in our neighborhood. We have a problem with speed control on Harvard. We have pedestrians, bicyclists, and there is no control. So you're going to dump 26 cars an hour, this is their estimate, into a residential neighborhood. If this has to go forward, I ask that you do everything and require the developer to do everything possible to protect the surrounding residences from noise, from runoff that is going to contain oil and grease, and from the excess traffic. It's really not the kind of development that belongs surrounded on three sides by residential. So I ask you to take those things into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public commentary.
Jerry Parker, Rhett Place. I want to express a concern about the lack of discernment displayed by this commission. And what I'm referencing in as far as that's concerned is the lawsuits against the city of Lynn Haven, the false arrests from the city of Lynn Haven that are making a huge impact. And as a citizen, I take that personally. And I'm going to reference exactly what I mean. Vicky Ramey apologized to Commissioner Tinder. Well, if he didn't do anything wrong, why did he apologize? That's number one. Number two, Vicky Gaynor. You can sit there and shake your head all day long, but what you said on the stand in reference to me was a lie. Outright lie.
Please direct your comments
Well,
to the chair, please. Thank
I'm
you.
referencing her.
But
I am
direct
referencing.
your comments to the chair. Thank you.
You know it, and I know it. So, are you going to continue this commission to display the mentality of ignorance is bliss? Or are you going to continue to look at these things and search deep within and tell yourself, These people are a liability to our city. And maybe Obos can answer this. How many outstanding active lawsuits are in the city of Lynn Haven? I know there's multiple. I know James Finch has some, Gordon, uh, Monty Odom. I mean, the list is endless. These are lawsuits against you guys for valid false arrest that were dropped by the state attorney's office because there was lack of evidence. Is that integrity from our police chief and our police department? Do you call that integrity? I don't. And you shouldn't either. And when you ignore that, you allow it to continue. You allow it. And Sam, I've heard you say that you love Lynn Haven so much. Do you really love Lynn Haven? Or do you love the people that you work with and you want to protect them? And that applies to all of you. You just want to protect the people that are showing lack of integrity? Because it's not right. People have to need to stop stepping forward and saying, we cannot let this to continue. It is a stain on this city, big time. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
It's Bruce Johnson. I live on Alabama Avenue. Been there for over 30 years. I'd like to address the Airbnb issue. I believe that our law enforcement, fire in Lynn Haven does everything they can. I believe the commission does everything they can. I do disagree with what y'all say, that you're bound by 509 and you're restricted. There is ample verbiage in 509 for any municipality in the state of Florida to enforce certain laws as set down in the framework of 509. I feel like I'm somewhat capable of interpreting statutes, got some experience in that area. And I believe, plus Lynn Haven already has ordinances to cover what goes on at these Airbnbs. Now, granted, it's not a daily or a weekly issue, but we have special events on the beach. We've had for years and years and years, but it's spilling over into this community on this side of the bridge. Unless I'm mistaken, the city attorney for Lynn Haven is in the same law practice as the city attorney of the city of Panama Beach. Sit down over a cup of coffee and discuss what they're doing. There's nothing that they've got there that the state is clamping down on. They're working within the parameters. Why can't Lynn Haven? Y'all can enforce noise ordinances under 26-123, section 38-9, disorderly conduct, 66.5, unauthorized parking. Your law enforcement agency in any community or statewide will act within the parameters of what they're empowered to do. They also take their direction from administration. Community can be proactive or reactive. You're proactive, you stop problems before they start. You're reactive, then you respond to a tragedy. You don't need to wait for a tragedy. My opinion is, if you're proactive in your administration, looking for the safety and security of our citizens, our law enforcement is going to be proactive. They do a great job. PD's all over the place. You see them patrolling, they respond, they're pleasant, there's no interaction with the public, not a problem there. But again, I reiterate what my neighbor, Mr. Torres, said. Instead of telling us what you can't do, tell us what you can do within the framework of 509. And I didn't read anything lately that says the legislature in Tallahassee put in other restrictions that are already there. They didn't do anything, unless they've done something that wasn't reported publicly. That's really what I had to say. I support what y'all do, but address this. It's important.
Thank you, sir. Again, that's why it's on the discussion, so we can tell you
Yes,
what
sir.
we can do.
Yes.
So that's why it's on the discussion today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public commentary? Yes, sir.
So everyone can hear, I'll speak directly into the microphone. We all seem to find, first of all, I'm Chaplain Cam Newman. I'm not paid by the city. I serve in this capacity because I love my city and I love the people, the residents, and the people that work here. Like I said, I don't take a paycheck from the city. This is all volunteer for me. We often find times to rise up and come out here and tell you about how things are going wrong and what we see. But I want to point out that there are some amazing positive things in the city that have come about. Specifically, we have two gentlemen from the fire department here. They both showed up at my house 6.5 minutes after my home was struck by lightning on August 24th. They were there with their teams going through my house. My son is the one who put out the fire while we were all out of the house. It was an amazing response from not just Lynn Haven Fire Department, but the police also showed up within 6 minutes. I have lived in 7 different countries, and I've lived in over 30 different cities in my tenure as a senior NCO for the Air Force, and never have I seen a response like that. I've never seen an older man comfort a 14-year-old boy as he's crying about the trauma that he just went through. And I just want to take time, like that is a direct reflection of your leadership, because everything flows downhill. It starts at the source and it moves downhill. I believe that in order to toss stones, I need to know the people that I want to toss stones at. I need to serve the people that I want to toss stones at, and I need to love the people that I want to toss stones at. So I love the city of Lynn Haven, and I serve the city of Lynn Haven, and I want to know more about each and every one of you folks. And I think if we all took time to do that, maybe some of our issues would just disappear. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public commentary? Yes, sir.
Morning. Robert Kibler. I live at 23 Briarwood Place.
You can speak in the mic for me. You're a tall
23
person, so you got to put up a
Sorry.
little bit.
324 Briarwood Place. The issue I want to bring up or comment about is that I'm butted up against where that thing is going to be at. I can sit in here and tell every one of y'all, if that was going to come into your backyard, you would not want it. That guy cleared the land without getting a proper permit. I didn't think anything of it because I'm not up on, building and stuff like that. It wasn't for one of our neighbors that deals with stuff like this, it would have gone on. He cleared that land out, and I've already had flooding issues. I've had my house flooded 3 times. A lot of it comes from that sports park across the highway. He cleared that out. I had mud all in my backyard because of what he did. The other thing is we got bad traffic. When the lady that just brought it up, the traffic in there is horrible. I've counted 40-some cars in one direction trying to get out. And it's getting worse. We got all these apartment complexes in there. You got the school, and it's getting bad. But it's just, I would hope y'all would consider what the neighborhood thinks about. We had like close to 3 dozen families here the other night voicing their opinion. They don't want that thing in there. Now, I don't know whether if y'all have made a decision on this or not, but I hope you would take some consideration about how we feel about it. I sure don't want that thing in my backyard. Like I said, if they're planning on 4-laning, where it's going to eventually get down there, it's horrible. It's bad enough right now. And with a 4-lane, you can't put another traffic light in there. You got one less than a quarter of a mile away. I mean, I don't know. And plus the traffic going in and out of that neighborhood, there's 2 ladies that live on Harvard, right, the very first house and the third house. Sometimes they can't even get out of their driveways because the traffic. Butted up against Briarwood Place, I've had cars backed up that far trying to get out. And it's just getting worse. I would, like I said, I would hope y'all would consider this before you make a decision. Unless it's already been made, I don't know. I wanted to voice my opinion, tell what I thought, what I think of it. So I would please consider this before y'all make a decision. Very much.
Thank you. Additional public commentary?
Hello, I'm Bernie Thompson, president of the Society for Watchdog Journalism. The address is 8317 Front Beach Road. I want to tell you just real quickly about there was a city in Florida, really interesting story. And there are, I think, 15 or so state attorneys throughout Florida. They're the lead prosecutors. You know, each one has a district. I think we're the 14th. And there was a confidential memo that came out. And this memo was the lead prosecutor needed to know whether or not to prosecute. So the task was an assistant state attorney, an assistant prosecutor, was supposed to advise the state prosecutor whether or not to proceed with this prosecution. And it had to do with a building official, and it had to do with a building official being arrested by a police officer, the chief of police for that city. And it turns out that the assistant state attorney told the lead prosecutor that it was a political arrest. And it was a political arrest because the city manager was encouraging the police chief to arrest the building official. Now, this is all in an official document, in a confidential memo at a state attorney's office in a city. And that city is you. And the police chief is Ricky Ramey. The city manager is sitting right next to you, Mayor. It's Ricky Gaynor. Evidently, the city manager was upset with the building official and encouraged the police chief to make the arrest. Now, it's very disappointing that the state attorney, Larry Bassford, knew about this. You say, Bernie, what evidence do you have to make such a claim? Well, I brought it for you. You're the first to get it. We've obtained this document, and I'll hand it to the city attorney. I have one for each of you. This is titled Interoffice Memorandum Confidential, and on each side of confidential is like 4 stars. This is top secret stuff here. And it's to Larry Bassford from the assistant state attorney, and it CC's Mark Graham. And I just want to submit it on the record, and you'll see what the state attorney's office knew and why that case was eventually dismissed by a judge, and why the state attorney's office was happy it was dismissed. But for about 2 years, this building official, Mike Gordon, was tormented by the city. And I know that he notified you all that there's a lawsuit coming. Cities have to be given 6 months' notice. So you got your letter of intent.
Thank you.
Here you go.
Additional public commentary? Not, we'll move on to our reports. All right, moving on to our reports at this time. In regards to the mayor's report, I will defer my report. We'll move on to our commissioners' reports. Commissioner Peebles.
All right. So just want to say appreciate everyone coming out today. It's nice to see this many people in a morning meeting. First, I want to say I just want to personally thank the Planning Commission for what they do. I know that a lot of people came out and they had their meeting, and Planning Commission does that. They volunteered for that job, and so I just want to say that personally want to thank you for taking the time, doing your research, listening to the citizens coming out. I also want to thank the citizens for coming out and talking to them. For my report, really, I spent a lot of time the past few weeks talking to a lot of citizens about anything from the library to flooding to Grease Pro and all that. So thank you all for reaching out. That's how we get things done, working together as a team, talking to each other and talking through things. So just want to thank everyone that reached out to me the past few weeks, and please continue to do so. And with that, that's my report.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Perno.
There you go. So I'll echo the sentiments of my fellow commissioner, and I read all of your emails, and I attended the planning board meeting. Saw the emotion in the room, and definitely I felt for every citizen in the room and the planning commission that evening, and you were heard. And we'll be sorting through that today. I do have a meeting tomorrow for the TPO subcommittee. We're going to be deciding on the bus wash for the county. Basically, we've done the bid on that, and we're going to be having a short meeting about that. Other than that, I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, because we won't see you again till December. And I really appreciate the way that the citizens have got in touch with us. There was a bevy of emails, and each one I could definitely tell there's an emotional charge to this agenda item today. So hopefully we'll get through it, and everything will be done for the best. Thank you.
Commissioner Ward.
Yes, so, yeah, thank you for everyone coming out. I said this probably multiple times. I wish we had this many people at every commission meeting. It always seems like it takes a certain thing to happen to get the people out. So I wish you would come back after this. And yeah, I think we all probably got the same emails on the agenda 19, and I reached out to every one of them. If there was a phone number, I called them. If not, I sent them an email with my phone number, and I talked to multiple people and had a lot of good conversations. So I appreciate everyone doing that. Besides that, I don't really have anything else. The only thing I got left is I attended legislative webinar with the Florida League of Cities. They didn't talk about too much. They only talked about 2 items. One of them, I don't know if you all remember the sovereign immunity, about basically the tort limits of how much people can sue the city per incident. And they talked about the importance of the balance between making the person whole and how municipalities don't have an unlimited budget. And I don't know if you guys remember, but they were wanting to raise it quite a bit to I think it was currently 200,000, and they wanted to raise it 2.5 million or something like that. So that's probably going to be in the next legislative session. And the only other thing they talked about, which I thought was kind of ironic, because we've had multiple conversations about enterprise funds. If there's any excess funds in the enterprise funds, you can actually transfer, if legislation gets pushed for it, I didn't know it was there before, that there was pushed to where you can transfer 25% of that excess funds to the general fund, which I'm not a big proponent of, but that was the only 2 things I talked about, and that's pretty much all I have. Thanks.
Commissioner Vandegrift.
Well, after Mr. Perno, Mr. Wark, and Mr. Peoples, they've covered just about everything. I too have had many communications about several of the topics on today's agenda. Again, I would like to reiterate, thank you for coming out, and thank you for expressing your opinion on these items. And that's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This past week, we've actually met, Ben Janke and I met with the president of Economic Development Alliance on identifying properties within the city where we can maybe develop and look at some industrial businesses coming to the city of Lynn Haven. And there even maybe some maybe expanding at some point. So pretty excited to see that may be a possibility. And hopefully in the next couple of months, we will see that move forward. I want to thank our staff. So many staff are doing really, really great things. Our Sports and Recs department is moving forward in so many different ways. We are now hosting tournaments. This past week, I think we had a charity tournament out at the sports complex, had over 1,000 people to attend, and it was really, really good for the community. We have added adult softball this year, and we have some teams and there's still time to sign up for that if you like to do so. Flag football is getting ready to gear up, so we ask that if you want to be a part of that as well, to sign up. And so there are many different things that are going to be going on in the next year for the city of Lynn Haven. And then we just encourage you with the holidays coming up. And I don't think we'll meet before the holidays, so I want to remind you about the tree lighting that will be coming up on that Tuesday, the 28th, and then the parade that will be December 2nd that we have every year. If you'd like to have an application in and be one of the participants, we encourage you to do so. Thank you, Mayor. That is my report.
And then the warrant list update. Are there any questions from the commission about the warrant list? All right, City Attorney,
Yeah, no specific report today. If you have any questions.
any questions for the City Attorney? All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Approval of minutes for 10/24/23 regular meeting minutes and approval to declare truck 26 as surplus and auction off. Is there a motion for this?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Warwick, second by Commissioner Vandegrift. City Manager, if you call the vote.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Vandegrift,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Commissioner Peebles,
Yes.
Mayor Nelson.
Yes, motion passed. Moving on to agenda item number 10, old business, final reading of ordinance 1137, adopting the 2021 edition of the International Property Maintenance Code. City Manager, you will read this by title only, please.
An ordinance of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, adopting 2021 edition of the International Property Maintenance Code, regulating and governing the conditions and maintenance of all properties, buildings, and structures, providing the standards for supplied utilities and facilities and other physical things and conditions essential to ensure that structures are safe, sanitary, and fit for occupation and use, providing for the condemnation of buildings and structures unfit for human existing structures in the city of Lynn Haven, providing for the issuance of permits and collections of fees thereof, repealing all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing severability, providing codification, and providing an effective date.
All right, thank you. Of course, we've discussed this extensively. Are there any additional questions from the commission for the city attorney regarding the International Property Maintenance Code? All right, is there any comments from the public?
Terry Parker, Rhett Place. I just want to state my objection to adopting something of international capability. And I think we have ordinances that cover stuff like this. And I just wanted to object to adopting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public commentary? Is there a motion from the commission?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Ward, second by Commissioner Peebles. City Manager, if you call the vote.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Peebles,
Yes.
Commissioner Vandegrift,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Mayor Nelson.
Yes, motion passed. Discussion only on short-term rentals. Of course, we've heard a couple of comments from residents on Alabama Avenue there. And this isn't the first time that we've had to discuss short-term rentals. We had an extensive discussion last year prior to the legislative session. We encourage citizens as well as, the commission to reach out to our representatives as well as those on those particular committees to let them know how we felt about this issue as well as the upcoming bills that were addressing this issue. And so after receiving this latest email from Mr. Torres, did follow with the city manager and ask her to confer with the city attorney as well as the chief of police, code enforcement, to see what is it that we can do in the city of Lynn Haven in order to address this particular issue. Do know that we are limited to some aspect that if we did not already have laws in place regarding short-term rentals prior to 2011, then we cannot directly put a law in place that would impact a short-term rental after 2011. So when some people mention about what the beach can do and what other cities can do, it's because they already had laws in place prior to 2011 addressing short-term rental issues, whereas the city of Lynn Haven did not have those laws in place or did not have those ordinances on our book prior to 2011. So we can't, create a law directly for short-term rentals at this point because of the state statute that limits that. But there are some things that we believe that we can do, or some ideas or suggestions that we do have. We did discuss this extensively on Friday, had an extensive discussion. And so since that time, we've had a time to let it germinate a little bit and see if there's any additional ideas that we might have. So any comments, City Attorney?
Yeah. I just want to make clear, we can, you're right. I mean, we can't create any new regulations because it's preempted to the state, and we've been consistent through this throughout. We can always enforce our code of ordinances, as far as if it's a nuisance, or there's noise violations, anything criminal, that applies citywide. So we're not targeting a short-term rental versus anybody else. I mean, just like if it was a regular house and you had those issues, we can always enforce that. We just can't create any sort of new regulation that just targets. And I know we've talked to the chief about that and code enforcement about that, and that's always been the case. So I want to be clear. We do have our regular, code violations and noise ordinances and things like that, and if there's a public disturbance or disorderly conduct or people are blocking the right of way, all that applies citywide. It doesn't matter if you're a short-term rental or not. So those things can still be enforced. Anything new or anything just targeting short-term rentals, that is preempted to the state, other than going in and doing building code inspections and fire code inspections. So that's what we're left with, in the statute. So I just want to be clear, that just because you're a short-term rental doesn't mean the laws don't apply to you. We just can't create anything new to target them.
So one question, I believe we asked this question Friday, is
Thursday.
Thursday. That's right. Thank you. I'm used to them being on Friday. Can there be an accumulation of violations for the owner? Right now, seemingly, if there's a noise violation, we enforce that. Well, it's just for those that are there for that moment. And then there's another noise violation or another call to PD about another incident at the same residence. But there's another group that's there. And so seemingly the group that's there would be the one that would get the citation per se. And I think that's part of the continuation of the issue, as I'm hearing it from the residents, is that there's nothing that's really enforceable to the owner to take accountability for what's happening with the violations at that residence.
Yeah, and I think we can. I mean, and when you look at like our nuisance abatement stuff, obviously we notify, the tenants that are in possession and the owner. And it's similar to when you look at, condo rules and regulations. The person that gets fined is the owner of that unit. It may be their tenant that's causing the trouble. And the same thing would be here. I mean, again, it depends on the violation. If it's a disorderly conduct or whatever, I mean, that's a criminal or, a citation sort of thing like that. That wouldn't be the same thing. But if there's, constant code violations and they're getting cited, obviously, an unpaid code enforcement fine becomes a lien on the property. So that's going to go against the owner. So depends on the violation, but the answer is yes. I mean, it could certainly stick to the owner of the property. You also, I know the chief talked about, I mean, there's a statute on nuisances, not so much how we normally think about it in our code, but there's a state statute on public nuisances, which it was really created years ago for, drug houses and gambling houses and prostitution, stuff like that. But if there are enough, predicate offenses, and I think, for the most part, it would be criminal type stuff, but you could deem those, deem that property a nuisance property. So, I mean, there are tools in the statute. It just has to rise to that level. And I haven't heard, that we have just a ton of criminal activity going on at any one particular place, but that's available, to the city and to the police department as well.
Additional discussion?
Yes, so if I understand it right, Panama City Beach and the county already had rules in place before Florida statute dictated we couldn't.
I don't know the answer to that. I know what the the beach and the county did recently was just update an ordinance,
For the
not based
fire
on, not based
inspection.
on 2011 rules, because I'm not sure that they had them or didn't have them, but based on, hey, we can go in and do building code inspections and
Right.
fire code inspections. And all they did was added a registration process, so they'd have a point of contact, name, address, email. We looked at doing that. There was 2 bills last year that failed that specifically gave cities and counties the right to do that, which leads you to believe the legislature's opinion is, hey, that even that registration process is preempted. But yes, there are cities and counties, including some local ones, that went forward with that registration process. But again, that's just to get contact information. If you have a problem, you need to get a hold of the owner.
Right. Well, I can tell you from the research I looked at, and I didn't know this, but Bay County had a short-term rental that caught fire. I think it was about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and it was a pretty detrimental fire. And so it got me thinking, and I started doing some more research, and come to find out there's other short-term rentals across the country where this has happened. And I think it's actually a safety issue. And I think having the fire building inspections is imperative, in my opinion.
That's something we could,
We can absolutely do that, by statute. We can do fire code and building code inspections.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, so as far as a property reaching a nuisance property status, what's the determining factor to get to that point?
We'll have to go through the statute, but it's like I said, it's normally, a number of arrests, whether it's like drug arrests or
gotcha.
gambling and stuff like that.
Mhm. So the odds of a short-term rental probably are not going to reach it.
Not that I've seen.
Okay.
Any additional discussion?
Yes, just to be clear, are you talking about a fire code or a fire registration every time the short-term rental is rented, or just for the owner of the property? Because we already established in the
Just-
pre-meeting that we can get contact with the owner, through water bills and whatnot, so.
So that fire I talked about in Bay County, one of the problems was there wasn't an egress for them when the fire got started. So, by having once a year, having it inspected to make sure it abides by fire code, to make sure, it has egresses and all the requirements by our fire code once a year.
Don't we already do that?
Not for short-term rentals, nope. Not for
and-
regular rentals, we don't
I
either.
mean, and that's the thing, like you don't necessarily know unless you would get on Airbnb or VRBO or whatever and find out. The city wouldn't know. So I mean, I think that's certainly something that periodically, the city you look at and say, oh, hey, there's some Lynn Haven addresses. Let's go out and do a building code inspection and a fire safety inspection, because people, they'll do stuff inside their house and add bedrooms that when not get permits and we don't know about it. So we can always
Agreed.
do that once we find out.
Agreed, but are we gonna actually know the properties that are Airbnbs without
Well, that's
pulling Airbnb every day?
That's going to be the challenge.
Yep.
And there's a way to do that. I've done the research, and I've sent information to people like, this is the site you go to see if they're actually registered. If they're not, then this is a site you go to report them. And unfortunately, that's the only avenue that I could find that they could take.
Any additional discussion? All right, well, thank you, City Attorney, staff, for bringing to us some ideas. Certainly, this is just for discussion today, not an issue that we can resolve today, but we do know that we have some ordinances and codes in place. We do have some things that we can use in order to help mitigate those situations at the short-term rentals, specifically one that's on Alabama. But this won't be our final discussion. We'll have some additional discussion on what we can do moving forward. Discussion only of library and parking improvement site plan, Director of Planning and Development.
Good morning. So this is a request for discussion on the site plan that you were all given, a preliminary site plan for a possible library and parking improvements. The city lost its library in Hurricane Michael, and the City Commission had expressed a desire to construct a new library building and additional parking for the Senior Activity Center in Sheffield. And as first stated, this is a request for a discussion on that as to how you might like to proceed. Thank
All right, are there any questions for the Director of Planning and Development?
Well, I guess I don't know if she'd have the answer, but this would be covered by insurance money. 1.9 million, right? And we can opt to use that money to lower the debt instead. Is that true? Like
We-
if we're,
You
okay.
can choose to do that, yes. The only part that, and of course, we talked about this on Thursday as well. We would use money from the surtax to really do the infrastructure. You can use money to do any type of improvements in infrastructure through the surtax. So that would be done. It's two pieces, two phases to this puzzle, if you will. It's first putting the infrastructure in place, which would be all those stormwater, maybe adding some parking space to the senior center, and then it's stopping right there. And then the second phase would be to the rebuild of the library, which is the $1.9 million. But yes, you can take that money and pay down the debt because it is our money, insurance
Okay.
money.
My concern is that, we are in a place where we need to do everything we can to lower the debt because it spiked about 4 or 5 years ago, and then with the disaster recovery bond on top of that, um, everything that we can do to help bring that down is going to help. And I've been looking at the numbers to see how often libraries are used, especially since we already have one in Bay County that our tax dollars are already paying for. But over from we've seen over the past 20 or so years a 31% decline in library use across the nation, and only 7% of Americans visit public libraries weekly, with 32% of Americans saying they never even visit a library. And so, with that being said, not only would we be paying money that could go towards the debt, but once it's already built, then we're going to have to pay more personnel to run it. We're going to have to pay maintenance to keep it up. We're going to have to pay all that stuff to continue to have a library that's going to be half the size of what the old one was anyways, when we have a public library already that our tax dollars are covering. I don't feel like that is the best use of $1.9 million.
All right, additional comments?
Yes, if I may, just kind of been here on the board a little bit longer than everybody else, and I know in the recent past after the hurricane, and we had the engineers come and talk to us, and we drew up the plans, and now we're talking about what we want to do with the money, but I really think we should open another window to our citizens. I'd like to hear more from them whether we want a library or not. We had talked in our pre-meeting about, hey, has anybody been talking to you about wanting a library? Well, I'm in Publix every day, and I've had people ask me about the library, when they want it back, and I do remember the old library, and every time I went in there, there was kids from the elementary school in there, and that old library got used. You can say it wasn't, but it was. And I just don't think we're going to settle anything here today. But I just want to appeal to everyone publicly to say, hey, get in touch with us. Let us know what you're thinking, what you want, because I think we need to open up the window and hear the sentiments of our citizens again.
I do believe it was last week that I received the email, and city manager might have been copied on that, asking about the grand opening of the library. When was the grand opening of the library scheduled? And I had to, refer back, say we haven't had our groundbreaking yet, so we're not going to have the grand opening. That will be a time ways off that will come after the groundbreaking. But we may not hear much about it, but there is some expectation and a waiting for the
There is,
for a library.
and my comments would be just to appeal to everyone to let's open up the dialogue publicly to hear from from our constituents.
So I guess this discussion for today is, do we want to tell staff to move forward with the library and parking improvement site plan?
We can actually do it in two phases. What we could do is move forward with getting a development order application together for the improvements, the infrastructure improvements.
Right.
And we could bring that to the boards and you could go ahead and vote on that so that we could at least do the infrastructure improvements that are needed anyway. And then at a later date, you could decide whether you wanted an actual library building or something else or nothing.
That's correct.
So, sorry if I add something. One of the things I remember I campaigned on, normally when someone campaigns, they got their top priorities. Normally it's like 3 to 5 priorities, and my top priority was the debt. And before Hurricane Michael got here, we already had a substantial amount of debt. So I just want residents to understand, we don't have a substantial amount of debt because of the hurricane. We had already had a substantial amount of debt. We actually had $37.9 million of debt before the Hurricane Michael got here. And so that is a concern of mine. And then I know Commissioner Peebles brought up about the debt, and that is one way to use it. But another concern is the sewer plant. We know that's going to have to be expanded because the city's growing so much. It's going to have to be either expanded or we're going to have to build another one. So that's going to be a really hefty price tag. So I just think that's some things we need to think about.
Got it. So today, do we want to direct the staff to move forward with the development order? Whether we build a library or not, they're saying improvements need to be made to that site. So is that something we want to do today? Is there a consensus to direct them to go ahead at least with the development order, and we can discuss how to spend the $2 million later?
We had spoken in the meeting that the infrastructure needs to be improved regardless because of what we have built already. So
So is this just for the design of the infrastructure?
Correct.
So we're going to have to do that anyways, right?
Correct.
Phase one, you're going to have
Right.
to do anyway.
Okay.
So yes, please move forward with that. Thank you. All right, agenda item number 13, discussion and possible approval to reject all bids received for the Mill Bayou Booster Plant and Reuse Improvements Project. Mr. Lightfoot.
Good morning. As we discussed Thursday, you all had approved ARPA funding back last January to build the Mill Bayou reuse tank and improvements there at the the reuse site 1. We received bids back in August on that, and they came in substantially higher than the original cost estimates and substantially higher than the approved ARPA amount. So at this time, we need to put this project on hold and reject the bids that we received.
Any questions for Mr. Lightfoot? Any comments from the public? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
second.
Motion by Commissioner Ward, second by Commissioner Perno, City Manager.
Commissioner Warwick,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Commissioner Peebles,
Yes.
Commissioner Vandegrift,
Yes.
Mayor Nelson.
Yes, motion passed. First reading of ordinance 1163, small scale future land use map amendment, City of Lynn Haven, 1609 Iowa Avenue, from low density residential to public institutional. City Manager, if you read that by title only, please.
Sure. An ordinance providing for the adoption pursuant to Chapter 163 Florida statutes of a land use change from low-density residential to public institutional for an approximate 0.688 plus or minus acres of property located on the corner of 16th Street and Iowa Avenue in the city of Lynn Haven, Bay County, Florida, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith and providing an effective date.
This is the first reading of ordinance 1163 for a small-scale future land use map amendment. The applicant is the city of Lynn Haven, parcel number 10507-000-000. The address is 1609 Iowa Avenue, and the property size is approximately 0.688 acres. The request is to change the land use from low-density residential to public institutional. The adjacent future land uses are as follows. To the north is low-density residential. To the south is low-density residential. On the east is recreation open space. On the west is low-density residential. This went before the Planning Commission, who voted approval for recommendation by a 7-0 vote. This is the parcel identified here. It's adjacent to Cane Griffin Park. This it doesn't really show on here, but this would show the current land use, and this would show the future land use. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Agenda item number 15, discussion and possible approval of task order for Panhandle Engineering in the amount of $59,700 for engineering services to add additional parking to Cane Griffin Park.
Good morning. Yes, actually, that parcel you just looked at for the land use is future Cane Griffin parking extension. Task order is for Panhandle to do the design, engineering, and permitting of that parking lot.
All right, are there any questions or additional questions for Mr. Baker? Is there any public commentary? Yes.
Terry Parker, Red Place. Chris Forehand. Let me tell you something about Chris Forehand. Chris Forehand received immunity. That means, and maybe you can explain this more, Ms. Robos, from World Claim, and I know you don't want to talk about Tallahassee, but this has to do with Lynn Haven corruption, and awarding contracts to someone that has obviously received immunity for his crime. And for anyone that doesn't know what immunity means, it refers to the legal protection that exempts a person from liability, punishment, or legal action that could otherwise apply. Did y'all not look into this? You are awarding citizen taxpayer money to someone who has committed a liability crime to the city. Do y'all not take that under consideration? Anybody? And if you want to see the immunity agreement that Chris Forehand signed, I have a copy of it. I will give one to Obus. I'll give one to Mr. Nelson. And if you would like to distribute this, but this is an agreement that he signed. This is not my words. This is his words. I saw his testimony in court in Tallahassee. And the whole situation, too, was about $3,500. There was 2 stories on that. Chris Forehand said $3,500 was given to Michael White to make a corporate handbook, which I've never heard prior to this. And Michael White got on the stand and said it was a Christmas gift. Who's telling the truth? Who's telling the truth? Have we seen this corporate handbook? He said he's made it for other people too. There was no contract. There was no check written. It was done in cash. I mean, who does that? Does that not make y'all think this isn't how business is done? This is the person you're wanting to keep on as our engineer. A person who has gotten immunity for a crime. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public commentary? If not, is there a motion from the commission?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Perno, second by Commissioner Ward, City Manager.
Commissioner Perno?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner Vandegrift?
Yes.
Commissioner Peebles?
Yes.
Mayor Nelson?
Yes, motion passed. Agenda item number 16, discussion and possible approval of task order for Panhandle Engineering in the amount of $51,350 for engineering services to design a sidewalk on 8th Street. Are there any additional questions for Mr. Baker regarding this? All right, any commentary from the public? All right, is there a motion for this?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Perno, second by Commissioner Ward, City Manager.
Commissioner Perno?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner Vandegrift?
Yes.
Commissioner Peebles?
Yes.
Mayor Nelson?
Yes, motion passed. Discussion and possible approval of task order for Dewberry Engineering in the amount of $65,915.37 for engineering services to design a sidewalk on 26th Street. Are there any additional questions for Mr. Baker on this? Any commentary from the public? All right, City Manager, or is there a motion for this?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, motion by Commissioner Perno, second by Commissioner Peebles. City Manager, if you call the vote, please.
Commissioner Perno?
Yes.
Commissioner Peebles?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner Vandegrift?
Yes.
Mayor Nelson?
Yes, motion passed. Thank you, Mr. Baker. All right, first reading of ordinance 1164, amending chapter 14 of the city's code of ordinances relating to building contractors examining board. City Manager, if you read this by title only, please.
Sure. Ordinance number 1164, an ordinance of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, amending the city's code of ordinance related to building contractors examining board, renaming the board, revising and limiting the duties of the board to conform with section 489.113 Florida statutes, providing for filing fees, repealing all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing severability, providing for codification, and providing an effective date.
Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 19, quasi judicial public hearing, opening at 10 a.m.
Sorry. As you stated, this is a quasi-judicial public hearing governed by our code. So there are, as we know, there's certain minimum requirements to ensure due process for all the participants. So first, any witnesses, obviously the city staff that's going to testify, the applicant or their, their engineers or their representatives, any affected people. If you plan on testifying today, if you'll stand and raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Second, we have a requirement that we disclose any ex parte communications. So as we've done before, if any members of this commission had any ex parte communications with any affected party or the landowner or their engineers outside the presence of somebody else, if you'll disclose that now.
Had none.
None.
I guess my question would be if there's citizens that live there in that area, they'd be an affected party. So we've probably talked to citizens about their concerns, right? So
Yeah, and that's fine. And if that's the case, if you'll just, basically state on the record today that you'll base your decision today on what you hear today at this hearing.
correct. Yes.
No.
And so again, procedure wise, like we've talked about, the city staff will make their presentation and submit the evidence, and then we'll hear from the applicant and their representatives, then any affected parties, then you can take public comment and discussion.
This is development order application for Grease Pro Tire and Auto Repair Center. The applicant is JAL 112 LLC. The agent is Robert Carroll, McNeil Carroll Engineering. Location is 3119 East Highway 390. The parcel numbers involved are 11300-379-000, 11300-377-000, and 11300-375-000. The property size is approximately 1.43 acres. The future land use map designation on the parcel is commercial. It is not in the CRA, and it is currently vacant. The project engineer is Robert Carroll from McNeil Carroll Engineering, who is here today to answer any questions or present on this. The reviewing engineer, Chris Short, from Dewberry LLC, who reviews on behalf of the city for stormwater, etc. He is also here today if you have any questions. The development order is for a Grease Pro Tire and Auto Repair Center, along with parking, landscaping, and infrastructure improvements. This is the future land use map, and it shows where the property, if I can get it, here's the property. It's these three parcels here, which is, as you can see, commercial. This is 390, which is an arterial. Across the street is mixed use here, and there's mixed use here, which could also be commercial in the future if somebody wanted to put a commercial venture on there. These are the properties on the aerial, and as you know, these properties were cleared without permit from the building department. All that information is in your packets. You've all received all the information on the background and the history before the development order was applied for. This is the site plan, which is also in your packet. So there will be a ingress here from 390. That will be an ingress, and then the ingress and egress here. This is a county road. They had to apply to the county for permission to have traffic come in and exit off that road, which they have done, and they were given permission. They've also had to apply to the state. This is a state road, so the state is in control of this road. They had to apply for the state for permission for that. We are not allowed to hold up a development order per statutes waiting for that permission from the state. However, I was told last week that the engineers have received information from the state saying that if you guys approve a development order, then they will issue them that permit. So you can talk to them a bit more about that if you have more questions. This is what the Grease Pros currently look like. This was the elevation that we required for them to submit. This is the landscape plan, the irrigation plan, and I also included a table of uses in your packet so that you could see the various types of thing that is allowed on a commercial property. So, you know, it's not just auto repair. There are a number of different things, Dollar Generals, that kind of thing, that are allowed on this property if somebody wanted to develop it. Thank you.
And before you leave, you also did like a consistency analysis. Can you
I
just
did a
go through that?
compatibility
Right.
analysis because there is residential to the rear, even though that isn't city, so they aren't citizens, that is county. We did do per the comp plan because it is adjacent to residential. We did a compatibility analysis on the things that our comp plan states we need to do them on, such as noise, etc. And that was also included in your packets.
Okay, thank you. This time we'll hear from engineer.
Good morning. My name is Robert Carroll, McNeil Carroll Engineering, 17800 Panama City Beach Parkway. I am the engineer of record and the agent representing the developer and the property owner. I have been sworn in. It's a pleasure to be here in front of you this morning to discuss our request for the development order. So you got a lot of input already from Amanda, but some of it I'm going to kind of reiterate. The proposed development does consist of 3 separate parcels. It's located at the northeast intersection of Harvard Boulevard and Highway 390. The survey, it's 1.43, you round up, it's 1.44 acres. The future land use is commercial. It has been commercial since February of 2001. That's almost 23 years it has had a land use of commercial. Our client, he's in the audience, he's also going to get up and say a few words. He purchased these parcels in 2005, which is well after the land use had been approved to commercial by the City Council of Lynn Haven, a little bit before y'all's time, not any of y'all, when it was originally annexed. He's always had the intent of developing this property. That's why he purchased it. He knew it was commercial. But over the years, we've had a recession, we've had hurricanes, we've had pandemics, we've had a lot of things that have kind of deterred from him being able to develop this project. But the time is now, and he's ready to proceed with this project. We are here to request approval for a development order. It has been reviewed by all of your staff, all of the city's consultants. They've all reviewed it to make sure it's compliance with the Lynn Haven Development Order, or excuse me, Land Development Code, along with DOT. They reviewed it for access and for the drainage connection. The proposed development is known as Grease Pro. It has 1 building that has 9 service bays in it. Then we also have a small 3,000 square foot office building that's on the east side of the parcel. Now, we attended the planning board last week. No one has contacted us prior to that meeting, so we were unaware that it was, you know, that many people that were upset. I understand it. I mean, I get commercial to residential, but you have other things in place that make us do larger buffers to be able to be compatible with the neighborhood. But before that, we did not know that there was this much controversy. Our developer, he's in this community. He's a good neighbor, wants to continue to be a good neighbor. On the site plan, you saw that office building, it's about 3,000 square feet. We're prepared to take that out of the project. We don't have to have that 3,000 square feet. We can reduce this project, which will reduce the impervious area. It will reduce the traffic. It will reduce the parking. So as part of this, if y'all decide to move forward, we're okay with you approving reducing the scope of the project and taking that office building out. We have no objection to that whatsoever. So I think that's somewhat a compromise that will reduce the trips, traffic, impervious, everything that goes along with it. Grease Pro, we all drive vehicles. Some may have electric, but They've been around since 1985. That's when they were established here in Bay County. They're a local business. They employ local people. He's got several locations. He has them in Lynn Haven, Panama City Beach, Callaway, and about to have a new one in Chipley. We are blessed to work with the Lovett family. We are doing the expansions on the beach, this particular location, and in Chipley. So they're growing. They want to continue to grow, and they want to continue to be good neighbors. Out of all these locations, there's several of them, if you've traveled around, that are adjacent to residential uses. The one on Highway 77, right up the street by Popeyes, is adjacent to residential land use. The one at Panama City Beach is adjacent to residential. I mean, it's right up against it. This one, at least we've got a large separation with a stormwater pond, landscaping, fencing. It provides that buffer to help attenuate noise, sound, lights. We're not going to have any lighting directed on them. Again, they want to be good neighbors. If they're not good neighbors, the neighborhood's not going to utilize this facility. They all need vehicles repaired if they have a vehicle that's not electric. So anyway, they want to continue to be good neighbors. The access for the parcel was brought up. We do have 2 points of access. One is on State Road 390. Then we also have the one on Harvard Boulevard. The one on 390, by taking out the office building, it may open up the opportunity to be able to take the driveway and make it a right in, right out. So we have more access onto 390. That's an opportunity that we'll be glad to explore. For the ITE code, ITE is a tool that we use, and it basically tells us, based on this type of facility, how much traffic is generated. Mr. Lovett, he's going to come up and he's going to tell you how much traffic he typically generates. He would love to have 20 vehicles per hour coming in and out of his business. That's just not, I mean, he would have retired a long time ago. That's just not how much trip that these things generate. But he will attest to that. He's been doing this for almost 40 years. We do have the commercial driveway permit in hand from Bay County. DOT, as was stated, they are ready to issue their permit, but they will not until we upload the development order. So when and if we receive a development order, we'll take that, present it to DOT, then they'll issue their access connection permit. Stormwater management parcel. So a while back, the city, you updated your land development code. You used to require 25-year critical storms. Flooding issues and things need to be fixed. So you adapted the code to 100-year storms. We 100% comply with 100-year attenuation on this site. We have no objection to that whatsoever. Matter of fact, for DOT, you have to model the 3, the 5, the 10, the 25, the 50, the 100, all spread out to 72-year storms. There's about 37 different model iterations that you have to do to satisfy DOT. We've done that. We have their blessing and permit, which exceeds your thresholds. During the planning board, it was brought up about the flooding within the area. We are aware that there has been flooding in this area, but it's not due to this parcel. And I think the gentleman that spoke earlier, he attests that, and he's spot on, that it's attributed to a drainage basin that's on the south side of 390. It's 300 to 400 acre drainage basin that it used to make its way prior to 390, come through, go right through a Bel Air, and makes its way to the bayou. Well, when 390 came, it blocked it. They put culverts underneath it. It forced the drainage to go to the west, and it comes up by the entrance to Derby Woods, continues west, piped, it's got ditch, or it goes through a long pipe system, ditches, and makes its way all the way until it finally gets to the bayou. There is a ditch that's on the east side of the property that the houses north of us, their cul-de-sacs, drain to the east, hit the ditch, come towards the front. That particular ditch, because of the sensitivity, the county maintains that on a yearly basis. Most other ditches, they do every 3 years. But I think documentation was proven to the county that it was done of May of this year they had cleaned that ditch. So with any development, when you have commercial against residential, so this particular land use, if we were doing this on 77, commercial to commercial, you've got buffers. If you've got commercial residential, you just have higher buffers, more landscaping. So your code requires buffering between the commercial and residential. We're complying with that landscape buffer 100% to provide as much separation. Your code has parking standards. We comply with all the parking standards. Your code has setback criteria. We comply with all the setback standards. Again, the owner purchased this property knowing he was going to develop it. It just hasn't been the right opportunity. Now is the opportunity. We have not asked for one deviation from your land development code. We're not asked for any variances. You created a code, we're complying with that code. We can only go by what you create and the rules that you create. Those are the rules we live by. We're not trying to be bad neighbors. We're not trying to put anything in a neighborhood that's not adequate. They could put a medical dispensary. They could put gas station. There's a lot of uses that are allowed by your code. This is a permitted use. You got another section in your code that are permitted uses, but they have supplemental standards. That's not us. We are a permitted use. We don't have to have any additional standards because it's permitted, it's allowed. You have to treat this the same as if it were here, as if it were on 77, 389, anywhere else where it's commercial. Commercial is commercial no matter where you have it. Residential, when they have a residential piece of property, they're entitled to their property rights. As long as they meet the height, the setbacks, impervious surface, they get the same rights as our owner does. So again, city adopted a comprehensive plan, land development code, periodic updates to those codes. We're 100% compliant with that code, and we just respect the request that you approve the development order. At this time, Mr. Lovett is going to say just a few words.
I thank you all for the opportunity to clarify some stuff. I was at the planning meeting and I was really taken back by the amount of people that showed up that had an issue with what I want to do as Grease Pro. What I want to state to you is I'm going to clarify what I heard and to make it very clear that my name's Aaron Lovett. I own Grease Pro 100%. Grease Pro is not a franchise. I started it right here in Lynn Haven in 1985, opened up in August of 85. I left here, I was born here. I left here in 70, went off to school. And my wife and I did in Tampa, worked in Tampa a few years, then Tallahassee, and then moved back here in 85 to begin Grease Pro and start this operation. I have 110 employees. I operate 8 locations. My hours of operation are from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday. I only have one site, that's our big site on 77 where we open at 7 a.m. in the morning. But our hours of operation are from 8 to 6. That's what I expect to be at the Derby Woods site at Harvard 390 to be 8 till 6. I butt up to neighborhoods all over the county. I have at the west end of the beach, I have a site there that we just been remodeling right up against the fence with the neighbors. I bought it like that. It was that way. I didn't develop that one. It was already there. I bought it. I have the one on Thomas Drive that I bought that's butt up to the neighborhood right behind it. I got the one in Callaway that I purchased. I actually built that one in Callaway, but it was permitted, and I got neighborhoods right behind me there. The one in Lynn Haven here I bought it and had to remodel it and rebuild it after the tornado hit it after the storm. But it's right across from Sonic. It's right up against the neighborhoods. I'm a good neighbor. I don't have neighbors complaining about what we're doing. The issue about the traffic at my new location was stated at the planning committee that I would be doing 25, 26 to 30 cars an hour. That would be unbelievable. What I expect at this site with this store on a slow day to be 20 to 25 cars per day in a 10-hour day. On a busy day, our goal would be to have days where we would have 50 to 55 cars per day coming in and out of there. But there's no way we're looking at 200 cars a day on that site. I'm just giving that's my experience since 1985. That's what I do. That's what we generate. That's the amount of volume we expect to be doing. Heard about the pollution. Pollution is not an issue in one of my stores. I am governed by so many agencies that are overlooking at what I'm doing. It's not going to be an issue. The noise is not going to be an issue because we will be using state-of-the-art equipment. There will be unbelievable buffers behind us between our store and the residential area that Robert has drawn in on the site. There was a question about Grease Pro Construction LLC. Let me clear that up and why that came into being. This came out of necessity. I had to do this. After the storm, I've got a lot of damage to deal with, and I needed to get these places rebuilt and opened up. So when I went out to find contractors to do it, I could not find anybody to undertake the jobs because what they wanted to do was rebuild people that wanted to tear down and start from the ground up. Well, I can't do that. You got to come in and help me rehab and remodel my sites. So in January, I looked at my son, James, who's here with me today. He's been with me in the business from day one. I said, you need to get a contractor's license so we can start construction and rebuild these places and get them back open. So he did. He undertook that. He went to FSU, had a master's degree. He took this on and got his contractor's license. He worked under different people to be certified. So he's got his legitimate license. He went to work. You can see his work because of what we did across from Tommy Thomas on 23rd. That's the first one that we redid after the storm. Then we did Callaway. We had Thomas Drive. We had the one here in Lynn Haven. We did it. So that's the work we're doing. That's the quality of work we're doing. We're just completing our project on the west end of the beach. It was a remodel, and we're ready to open it up. Hopefully in the next week or two, the city will sign off of that, City of Panama City Beach. We're expanding our Thomas Drive location. Behind it, we are permitted to build a tire and auto center behind it. He is now working on that. Our Chipley location has been approved, a development order. We're wanting to make progress on that. In addition, with our Harvard and 390 project, we're wanting to get moving on it. Let me cover this issue about us clearing this property without a permit, this debris we were removing. There are 3 commercial parcels there at Harvard and 390. And a little over it was prior to Michael, I basically maintained the site. We would go in there with a bush hog and keep it cut. And didn't cut the whole thing, we cut the majority of it to keep it where it didn't look bad for the city right there on that main site. So we were maintaining it. After Michael was over, I have 9 parcels of commercial property that sustained severe damage. 15 commercial buildings that had severe damage. I lost roofs, roll-up doors were blown out of the stores, windows were blown out, waiting rooms were damaged, ceilings damaged, light fixtures totally blown away, computers damaged. All the grease post signage was done away with that storm. So that's where my focus has been for the last 4 years, is getting those back online, working and looking good. We had to haul off our own debris. Purchased a truck, a dump trailer that my son James, and he had a crew working with him. We had tons of debris. There's no telling how many hundreds of trips we made to the landfill hauling this stuff off from all these sites we had. So we used our own equipment and we were moving it off, getting rid of it. So that takes place for 4 years. So then finally things let up and we get back over to Harbor and 390 and look at it, and it is a mess. It is an eyesore. Why is it an eyesore? Because after the storm, the utility trucks wound up using our site for a staging area. For a number of months, they used it while they were here. Then after they left, the debris hauling trucks decided they would use it for a staging area. Well, they weren't quite as nice, because when they left us with a mess. They had left mounds of material piled up there. They had walled it out where their trucks had gotten stuck and they had to remove them, and we had a mess to deal with. So here I am. We're in the habit of going in here and cleaning them up. We didn't have to get permits to remove all this debris and trees and doors and everything that was blown. We just were trying to get open. That was my mindset. So we saw Harbor and 390 and what a mess it was. We just jumped in there to begin removing the debris and to haul the debris off and get it back to where we could cut it. And so I approached it like the other sites. And I went in there with that purpose. That was my honest intent, just to get it cleaned up so we can cut it and maintain it again. So I'm there trying to do that, and someone drives up and says, "You've got to get a permit to remove that debris." I said, "Okay, then that's what we'll do." So we made a trip to the city, got the permit to begin removing the debris. So we go back, we start removing the debris again, and in trying to haul this debris out, there are these gullies that have been washed out in my property that I didn't do, that wasn't there when I bought it. So we brought in some yellow sand to help fill it up so we could drive in and out. So we brought in some sand. Well, then I'm told, a young man drives up and says, "You can't be hauling sand out here." I said, I want to drive on my property. He says, "You can't do that. You got to have a development order to do that." So I said, "Development orders, how do I get that?" He says, "So we came down to the city and realized it was more than me and James could handle. My son, we needed an engineer, had to do that. So we hired Robert Carroll at his firm to get us a development order. He would take care of it. So his first process is he needed a survey done, a survey comparing the elevation of the road to the elevation of the property. We agreed to do that. They're out there surveying. Dewberry Engineering's doing it for us. And a young man drives up in the city truck and says, "You can't be out here. This isn't permitted. You can't be working on this." I get the call from him saying, "I've been told to stop, Mr. Lovett." I said, "Why?" So I called Robert up. Robert had to call down here and explain that we had to get this survey for the development order. So then it was finally issued to go ahead and keep doing that. So we get that moving again. And then the next time we need soil borings done on the site. is the next stage. So we hire a company to come out and do the soil borings on the site. They set up their drilling machine to do the soil borings, and a young man drives up from the city saying, "You can't be out here drilling wells on this property. You can't do that." And I'm thinking, matter of fact, the company doing it had called Robert. I got a call from the city, and I called Robert and says, I don't understand it. He said, "Well, I'm going to call him up and see what's going on." He explained to the city that for me to get a development order, I've got to have the soil borings. So that was approved. After that was delayed for a while, that was moving on again. So once again, this company goes to work. We get the soil borings. We get that. Things roll along for a while. And so at some point, we got a call from the city stating that, "Mr. Lovett, don't you know you can't be building on your site?" And I told the individual from the city on the phone that I and my son haven't been on that site now for probably 3 or 4 months because we are tired of being accused of stuff, so we just stayed away from it. And this individual said, "Well, you're hauling dirt back in there again." I says, "No, I am not hauling dirt to my site." I said, "Let me check on it." So James and I went over there, and sure enough, somebody backed in there and dumped a dump truck load of black, filthy, dirty material that's unrecognizable. And I turned around and called the city and told them, I said, "I'm telling you, this is not anything I put on my site. I wouldn't put that on my site. Now I'm going to have to clean it up because somebody else dumped it on there. And I'm tired of being accused of being taking advantage of somebody. I'm not doing it. I don't know who did this to me, but I don't like it." So that's the story behind why the debris was being removed to begin with and where that got to. I was given the impression at the last meeting that I had avoided obtaining the proper debris removal permit because there's 3 parcels there and it looks like I got it for 1 parcel. All I know is when I went to the city with James, we asked for a permit to clean that piece of property, to get the debris removed, and they sold us one. If I owe you for the other 2 or something, I will be glad to write you a check. It is not a problem. We're not trying to do anybody out of anything. We'll be glad to take care of it. Lastly, and I'll sit down. This property had a sign on it by Commander Real Estate years ago when I bought it. And it said, "For sale, 3 commercial properties with city water and sewer." I was attracted to it because I was looking. My wife and I were looking. And so when I saw that and realized it was on commercial, I actually came down here, that was years ago, verified it was commercial, and I said, I will want to build an oil change, a car wash, or a tire and auto on that site. Is that permitted? "Oh yeah, you can do any of that on that site." So that's why we bought this property back then. I have had a lot to deal with for it to take this long to build it. We went through a recession after I bought it. I was working on a plan back in 07, and then we went through the recession. The downturn hurt us drastically. We went from 156 employees to 82 employees. I mean, it took a while to recover from all that. It's not quick. So I bought it with this intent to develop it like this. Robert's already told you we'll take the office building or the commercial building off the end of it on the west end. I'm not trying to be a bad neighbor. I want to be a good neighbor. And they will be proud of this site when we get through with it. It will look first class. It will be run first class, and people will want to attend there. I thank you again for this time to speak, and I thank each one of you for listening to me, and I would ask you to approve my project so I can get moving with it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from the commission for the engineer or for the applicant?
Nope.
All right. At this time, is there any further discussion on the approval of the development order application?
Yes, sir. So I remember when St. Andrews Park next to Moat Highlands was a big deal. We didn't have quite as many of this people come in, but we had quite a few people that were not happy about it, and they had a lot of questions. And I know the way our meetings the way commission meetings are set up is it's not supposed to be a back and forth. That's the way municipal meetings are set up. So I know there's a lot of questions that residents and there's a lot of things that are concerned. So I would like to recommend that we do a workshop and we ask the county if they can send a representative for stormwater. That way, the engineering firm can do their presentation just like they did with St. Andrews Park, and residents can come up and ask questions and get answers to their questions. So I guess that would be my motion.
All right, there's a motion to have a workshop to discuss this development order application. Is that the motion that you're making?
Yes, sir. And see if we can get county, at least for stormwater, because I think that's one of the big concerns that affects county.
Not having this public commentary right now. We're not having public commentary right now. Thank you. Sir, please go have a seat. Thank you. Thank you. So, if there's another disruption, I will have you removed. Thank you. So, City Attorney, question for you is our decision today, should the county stormwater be something that's impending on our decision today for approving this development order application? Or are we just looking at the fact that they've met the requirements of the city's standards for the development order application?
Right. I mean, this is based on our ULDC and our code of ordinances. We have our own stormwater requirements. I think we've heard testimony about that. So you're right. I mean, your decision today is based on compliance with the city's code of ordinances, including our stormwater requirements.
And if they've met all the requirements, which we've heard from staff that they met all the requirements, as well as confirmed by engineering that they met all the requirements, if we do not move forward in making a decision on this development order application today, is there any particular repercussions that we could incur?
Right. I mean, obviously, you hear the testimony, and you're right. I mean, we will hear public commentary. If there are affected persons, like adjacent property owners, we can swear them in, and you can consider that as well. So, I mean, we're not done yet. But yeah, you'll need to make your deliberations and, have a decision whether to approve it with conditions or modifications, or deny it. If everything has been met by the applicant and they comply with our code, I'm not going to, lobby on their behalf, obviously, but certainly any, negatively affected developer or property owner, could always take the city to court. I went through it in Springfield about 10 years ago, and you basically look for, was competent substantial evidence presented to the body that justifies whether the approval or the denial. So you would have to have some sort of competent evidence that you've heard today, some sworn testimony that would justify denying it. Just like, we've gotten Amanda's testimony, the applicant, the engineer, the packet that's before you, that's competent substantial evidence. So you would need to base your decision on that, and that's what any court would look at to see, all right, what did this board hear, and was there any evidence that justifies the denial?
Okay. Thank you. Are there any additional testimonies that we need to hear today? Yes, sir.
Thank you all. My name is Zach Detweiler. I live at 1600 Harvard Boulevard. That's approximately 200 feet from the entrance of the Grease Pro that will be going in. First, let me make a few statements. I am not a professional engineer. I am not licensed in this state. So any statements that I make and any assumptions that I have made going through this packet are not through a licensed process. I did receive my engineering degree from UCF in mechanical engineering. I've done public management or project management of works for multi-million-dollar projects for the last 10 years. And I do have experience in both public and private sector. So My information on this is due to experience and not through licensed engineering. I do want to address I want to make several statements by Mr. Carroll and Mr. Lovett. Their initial statements stating that it has always been the intention for them to develop this property is incorrect. Prior to them clearing, or about the time of them clearing, between the months of, I believe, July 2022 and October 22, this was listed on CPAR, which is the real estate agency, which means they were trying to sell it. It was being sold by a lady named Patrice Griffiths. Um, that was pulled off after 4 months after them unable to sell. Throughout this time period of them owning it from 2005 till now, you can listen to residents' testimonies. It has been tried to be sold several times. This was not the first time that they tried to sell it. And that is not my statement. That is words that I've heard from residents. In regards to the land clearing, yes, they did initially begin to clear the land without a permit. I am the gentleman who drove up to them and let them know that they need a land clearing permit to do so. I am also the one who filed the stop work order on the property when they brought in the dirt. Two reasons for that. One, clearing trees without a permit, a tree survey is required as part of the development order to do that. A tree survey is required because it protects things like specimen and historic species of trees like oak trees, maple trees, things like that, that may be on the property. If they clear the land and that tree survey is not performed, then the city has to go about determining whether or not any tree species were removed that are protected according to Lynn Haven ordinances. As you can see on page 2, if you go through your packets, if you have them or not, image 1 shows the CPAR photo that was provided by the real estate agent. Image 2 shows an aerial drone photo that was provided by me about 3 days ago, showing that the property is completely cleared other than in the very southeast corner where the drainage entrance occurs. I apologize that they're not displaying it for you and that you don't have it in front of you. It was provided to you last night. Through aerial photos of Bay County Appraiser's office in April of 2022, you can see that the property, as Mr. Lovett said, did have plenty of damage to it. I would estimate that about 40% of the property still had elevated trees on it, live, living green trees. About 20% of the property was probably damaged at that period of time, and the middle of the property was completely cleared out. In May 2023, you can see that the property was 100% cleared out, and silk fences were placed up as a requirement of the city to basically slow and stop damage. There is a 40-foot easement at the front of this property. That easement is maintained by the county. That easement contains stormwater drains, main water lines for Bay County, cable and phone, telecoms, sewer, and city-maintained water lines for hookups to this parcel. Any contractor will know before you dig in an easement, you go and get an 811. That's regulations. That was not done to my knowledge. There were no markings on the ground and no markings visible, and this easement was completely dug up in the time frame, as you can see, pictures provided on pages 5, 6, 7, and 8. On page 7, you will find image 10 is a photo of an image where they tried to remove a root ball from this easement. This digging occurred about 3 to 4 feet deep, which is about the average depth of where these utilities would be located in this easement. In this same photo, you can see 3 oak trees that are now down on the ground in that southeast corner. That was not related in the tree survey. For the city, procedural failings, in my opinion, permits were only given to 1 parcel, not 3. That is because the city requires that only an address be given for the parcels, and the address was only applied for by the applicant for the 1 parcel, not for all 3. A combination did not occur. Permits issued to a company without a contractor's license. On the permit that you issued, it is stated Grease Pro Incorporated with the license for Grease Pro Construction LLC. They are 2 separate corporate entities. That was a failure on the city in the licensing process or in the permitting process. Failure to perform 811s, as I stated, there has been no proof provided in any of my public records requests that an 811 was performed and provided to the city through the permitting and DO process for this easement. I have attached all the applicable ordinances necessary for that. Moving on to the development order application section. This is page 11. Per the UDLC, requirements for a application at minimum: name, address, and phone number of the owner, name, address, and address of the agent. This is important because Mr. Aaron Lovett signed as an agent for this application for JAL 112, but did not provide this information. Furthermore, a survey of the lot was required. You can go off of survey pins, but a licensed survey must be provided for all four corners of the interior of this. That was not provided as part of the public records request from the city. Furthermore, in sections 10.1.3, third-party permits from FDP and FDOT are required, as well as the county. They were provided by the county, and the second go-around after this was pulled from the first go-around at the planning board meeting for the county, FDP and FDOT are pending, and they are correct that those permits are not needed to proceed forward. A tree survey is required. That has yet to be provided by the city as part of these proceedings. Issues that I take with the process for which the city goes through and allows for these DO applications. One, anytime that you have two corporate entities involved in any application, the city should absolutely get a signed waiver from the developing corporation as a guarantee or a licensing agreement of the second party in order to state, yes, they are working on our behalf. That was not done in this procedure. I've never been provided that, and I re-requested that as part of my public records application. When signing, and you can see the image 12 on page 13, when signing, Mr. Aaron Lovett, the applicant representative, titled his name Grease Pro President as title and company. Grease Pro Incorporated is not affiliated with JAL LLC. Mr. James Lovett signed himself as Grease Pro Construction Manager. Both individuals, while may possibly owning a portion or all of the entity for JAL 1112, did not present themselves in these proceedings as an administrator of JAL 112. They presented themselves as corporate entities for Grease Pro Incorporated, which is an S Corp filed with the state of Florida. Missing documents as of this proceeding now: a tree survey, a survey signed and sealed by a licensed surveyor that is applicable for 12 months. Flood zone data applicable from the floodplain manager. FDP stormwater contamination mitigation plan, wastewater contaminant prevention designs, Bay County Drainage Connect permit, which was stated in the TRC, and we know the FDOT permit was not included. Applicable ordinances is in section D of this on page 14, 15, and 16. Moving on to the design plans. Yes, this is a 3-bay oil change facility, a 6-bay tire change and repair facility, and a 3-sectioned office building. As stated by the developers, they will pull it if they want. Unfortunately, in these proceedings here, you have to go over the development application as it sits now. Plans cannot be amended at this point. It has already gone through planning board and it sits with the commission. You can either approve or deny, and then they can resubmit a development order application with significant changes to the property, which would be removing a building, adding space for drainage, and other parking. That is their choosing to do so. Moving forward to page 18, what you will find is the elevations for this building. On the front side, it is clearly marked as a glass entrance or a main tower entrance in the front of the facility, which will be facing south. On the north side, the rear entrance of the building, this is a steel locking door, typically standard with an employee's entrance and or a serviceable entrance where you can bring goods in. This does not appear to be a public entrance, though we can ask if this entrance will at 100% all times be unlocked and for public access if you would like to do so to the developers. Moving on to page 19, Building 2. Building 2 is stated to be an office building. It will have 3 separated segments, each 1,000 square foot. Each one has a bathroom. They all have independent entrances. On the elevations provided to the second building, you have signage above, you have a apron or covering over each entrance, and at the bottom of it, you have what is noted as a storefront entrance. A storefront entrance marks to me retail, not office. Now, I do understand that maybe lawyers' offices or maybe insurance offices may want to go in here, but a storefront office determines to me that they might rent this out to retail. Moving forward, discussing easements, they have a 30-foot easement off to the east side of the property and a 40-foot easement, which we have already discussed, to the south side of the property. That 40-foot easement will be built into half of the driveway on the front side of their property would need to be taken if for any reason expansion would be needed by FDOT. That 40-foot easement also contains utilities and will need to be maintained during the engineering of this process. On page 21, you can see the design flow for this facility, and I will bring up questions that were asked in the TRCs about design flow from inside the building. I have not seen design specs for flow inside the building in case stormwater enters into the building, only for the exterior of the building. All rain flow from the facility and the impervious area is set to be sent to the stormwater basin, which, if overflowing, will outflow into a public drainage easement. Getting to the basic calculations of stormwater necessities, they are correct. You have a 100-year flood, and according to the calculations, which were checked for only the calculations, their calculations were done properly. However, same thing as we know with hurricanes, same thing we know as a lot of different things. If your initial inputs are wrong, where that hurricane's going to go out, where that hurricane's going to end up, will not be in the correct place. For this particular application, the calculations were based on precondition qualifications as 100% wooded in good condition. As you heard testimony prior to this, they had bush hogged out the middle of it, which you can see from aerial photos. They had significant damage to the tree structure that was already in there. So the engineers placing a precondition development condition as 100% good condition wooded would be incorrect. 50% grassland, 50% maybe fair condition wooded would be a more accurate. As I've stated to this board or this commission many times before, trees play an important part in stormwater runoff. Leaves collect up to 40% of rainwater. It slows the velocity to the ground, and it can also help slow velocity off of the particular grounds. Tree condition at 100% is very important. If it does slow 40% of that rain rate to the point where at least 20 to 30% of it can also evaporate it back off or wait till after rain event conditions, that is all taken to addition in the calculations for how large that stormwater facility needs to be. If the inputs for this calculation were incorrect and not checked, then the stormwater basin will not be large enough, and it is possible that it will overflow even within the 100-year flood basin, and therefore will outflow, potentially outflowing oils, grease, antifreeze, brake fluids, and things that would be found on the repair side of their facility, and not just the oil change side, which is the only thing that the developers mentioned in their TRC. On page 23, image 21, you can see an outline of where I basically made marks of the estimated forested vegetation, which is fair, and the non-outlined portions, which I would consider to be grasslands or dirt. There are different value calculations within the flood management systems for these types of things, and those changes in initial inputs would absolutely change the requirement for the basin. On page 24, image 22, as they stated, you can see the flow from which these drainage basins would occur. On page 25, you will hear residents in public comment talk about flooding that occurred. The two photos in images 23 and 24 occurred on Briar Lane, or Briar Patch Lane, I believe is the name of the street. This occurred on September 9th, 2022, during the period in which they were removing trees, and on September 10th, same period. Estimated rainfalls total for the area for flooding in image 23, which flooded about half of the cul-de-sac, was about 0.37 inches over a period of 45 minutes. Flooding images that occurred on September 10th for these images, which basically flooded the entirety of the cul-de-sac and went into driveways, was approximately 1 inch over a 4-hour period with 2 spikes in rainfall for about an hour and 20 minutes. Going over to parking design. This required facility, per the calculations of city management, was 35 parking spaces. That was based on a calculation of office retail space, which is 300 or a parking space per 300 square feet, and for auto repair, which would be a calculation of a space per every 200 square feet. The main facility is estimated to be 4,949 square feet. The secondary facility or building is estimated to be 3,000 square feet. That comes out to 35 required parking spaces. In allowance for this facility, 26 exterior parking spaces, including 2 handicap parking spaces, 9 interior parking spaces within the bays of this repair facility. Questions and major concerns that I have. The development will need more exterior parking spaces, especially if retail goes into Building B. We will get into those calculations in a minute. Under what authority does the planning manager or the city have to classify parking spaces within buildings? And is there a standard for which this has occurred on other types of buildings of this type facility? Were the proper classifications used when calculating parking for this development? We will get into that in a second, but there is reason to question that. Was ADA compliance assessed when reviewing these plans? Is that part of the review process? And just to throw it in there, they're required to have 3 bicycle parking spaces per the UDLC, which are not included. Parking calculations, we went through them a little bit, but one item that I do want to bring up. This was designated as an auto repair facility. However, Mr. Lovett's Grease Pro, as he stated on 77 in Layton Haven, close to 1415th Street, I believe it is 1509 Ohio Ave, is listed on Bay County Property Appraiser as a service station and not an auto repair station. That is important because in the UDLC, section 6.05.06B8, an auto service station is required to have 2 spaces plus 4 spaces for each service bay. That would make a requirement of 38 parking spaces just for the repair facility. We only have 25 for this facility. Moving on, I do want to state that I did attempt to go into the city and speak to the planning manager about this. No direct response was given to me as to the difference or definition of what classifies as an auto repair space and an auto service station, but there is precedent to why a Grease Pro may be an auto service station. Moving on to ADA compliance. I will get out the ordinance for you again. Actually, I believe I placed it back here. Didn't place it in here. Anyways, I stated it at the public board meeting, but essentially what it states is that a 44-inch walkway is required without going behind the parking spaces of any other vehicle other than the handicapped person's own vehicle in order to enter the facility through a public accessible entrance. As I stated before in the plans, the rear access to me appears to be a service entrance that will not be enterable by the public at all times. Maybe Mr. Lovett will say otherwise, but if for any reason that door is ever locked and not accessible by the public, this building will be an ADA violation because the planning development manager allowed for parking spaces to be included in the service bays. Therefore, they cannot walk up to the building and walk around the building because each of those service bays are a parking spot and therefore would violate ADA compliance. Moving over to the traffic study. The traffic study stated that only 26 vehicles will be entering and exiting this facility. And while we did hear testimony from Mr. Lovett that he would love for that much to be coming in and out of his facilities. Unfortunately, as Mr. Carroll stated, this has to go off the facts. They use an ITC rating or an ITC. Basically, there's an entire set of standards. Each type of facility has a different ITC rating. For building one, which is the repair facility, they listed it as an auto care center. That is ITC code 942. They have a stated net peak of trips as 20 vehicles per hour, 50% entering and 50% leaving. Facility type 2, small office building. ITC code 712 with 6 main trips per hour, 34% entering, 2 vehicles, 66% leaving at peak with 4 vehicles. Expected units 3 and expected units service bays as units designated for his calculations was 9 for the main building. That gives an average trip rating of 2.17 to the auto service center and 2.16 to the small office building. For reference, out of edition 11 of the ITC codes, which Mr. Carroll stated that he was using, Quick Lubrication Shop, ITC code 941, has 8.7 as an average per 1,000 square feet. An auto care center, which is the stated intended purpose of this, has a ITC code 942, identical, looked it up, 3.1 trips per 1,000 square feet. The stated average was only 2.17 in his calculations. A tire store, this is a tire repair facility and auto repair facility, states a 3.75 rating, ITC code 848. And we do have an auto parts and service center, which does have a lower value of 2.76. However, if you average the 3 pays with the 6 pay, it would not come out to 2.17. Furthermore, a strip retail plaza less than 40,000 square feet would be 3.75 ITC code 822. The small office building listing only had a 2.16. You can see how if they do use it for retail, the traffic study would be incorrect. If the ITC codes for net traffic were used for both the auto care facility and the strip retail facility, you have a net vehicle traffic per hour for the auto facility of 15.39 and a net peak trips for the strip retail facility of 11.25. Gross trips in and out of that facility would be approximately 53 vehicles per hour. In the traffic study provided by McNeil Carroll, it states that about 45% of the traffic will go north on Harvard Boulevard when exiting, and only 55% of the traffic will go south, ending up at the turn lanes between Harvard and 390. I think every resident here can tell you that will not be the case. Most people will not go up to 12th to cut all the way over to 389, to cut all the way down back to 390 in order to make a left-hand turn. Moving forward to FDOT AAD standards and calculations in this process, this road segment for Highway 390 between County Road 389 and Transmitter Road is road segment number 461642. Every year, the FDOT puts out AADT traffic amounts. This is the average aggregate traffic numbers that will go through on any given day. So they take the entire year and then they break it down to what is the average per day across the entire year. That number is 15,500 vehicles per day go across 390 in front of Harvard Boulevard on this segment. This is a D grade level road. D grades are given to roads that essentially have little to no shoulder, are known to have traffic accidents, cause congestion, and can cause psychological issues such as road rage, given the poor quality of the road for a 2-lane road. The max vehicles per day at peak allowed on this road is 16,500 vehicles. So they are only 1,000 short of that requirement from the 2022 numbers. In 2018, that number was 17,000 vehicles. It did dip, especially after the hurricane. Many people left, other things happened. That number for the last 2 years has been consistent at 15,500 vehicles. However, in the last year, Over 1,000 units and homes have been created. The sports park that is less than 50 feet away as an entrance opened back up, and you have people now going to there. It is conceivable that they will add at least 500 more vehicles to that count. It's plausible. If that happens, and the traffic numbers that I approximated are correct, for a 10-hour work period, you could see as many as 500 vehicles added, which would put this road at its limit. Moving on to environmental and wastewater, and this is where I would recommend that the commission ask questions to their city. I am pulling these concerns out of a TRC meeting that occurred on 3/16 with responses on 4/17, and again a TRC resubmittal that occurred on 5/02 with no response from the developer. I will read as follows. Item number 5 on the response. Will there be a vault in the bottom? A vault, for those that don't know, in an oil change facility is basically a basement that is built so that you can go underground, walk across, and change the oil from above, and it drips down. Most of these are built to spec, and they will speak on that. They are built to spec. You have an oil pan under it, it collects everything. They have a capture facility, things like that. A vault will be built. Number 6, will a sump pump discharge water into a tank or sanitary sewer system? There is no proposed sump pump, which means if there is oil and water captured down in the bottom of this vault, how are you going to get it out? If water comes in during a really bad rain and it falls into here and oil mixes with it, how are you going to get it out? Number 7, an oil and water separator is needed. That was not a question, that was a statement from the city. Any spilled oil is self-contained within the lower level of the building. The engineers did not provide how that would be taken care of. Number 26, plans sheet 3 of 10 grading plan. Please provide information to ensure that oil and grease will not discharge into the parking area and stormwater system. That is a statement from the city, i.e., are there internal bay arrows shown on the sheet flow arrows? Will there be a trench drain, essentially a trench at the entrances to those doorways on the repair facility side, so that if water gets in and it runs out, it will be captured and separated from stormwater on the exterior? The response. Any spilled oil is self-contained within the lower level of the building. They are speaking to the oil change side. No statement or plans were made for the tire and repair side for the 6 bays. Moving over to the TRC meeting notes, on 502, Deputy Director of Utilities, Danny McArdle's statement. I am looking for the following. How is the sanitary sewer line is going to be protected from mop water that can potentially contain grease and oil laden wastewater that could cause a problem with our wastewater treatment plant? Please see Chapter 10, Section 1003.4, Oil and Water Separators Required of the Florida Plumbing Code for Oil and Water Separators OWS requirements. With other Grease Pro facilities that I've seen, the facility is constructed in such a way that the vault where the cars pass over has a mechanical pump system to drain any collected water and oil. Please demonstrate how this wastewater will be treated, or if this is going to be kept and recycled by the vendor. At minimum, an OWS will have to service the mop and sink station shown. Going back to question 8 from the meeting notes on 3/16, the GPM discharge of the mop and sinks stations will be needed. The mop and sink stations are limited to hand washing and cleaning of the facility and should be very low flow. There have been no statements, no engineering plans provided on how mechanical filtration will be done for oil, grease, and other fluids at this facility. The concern, as we stated at the planning board meeting, is how will oil, water, and other fluids be stopped from going into wastewater and eventually out into our bay? Ending questions that I have. How is the vault designed? Is it prefabricated or will it be built on site? Is it watertight? The reason that I asked that question, question number 2, Per their own geological studies, the water elevation at high water tide will be at an elevation of 20 feet above mean sea level. This facility will only be constructed at 25 feet above mean sea level at the flooring of the oil change. That means that at least it will sink 5 feet into the ground, if not more, because I don't think they have any 4'6" people changing oil in their facilities. If that is the case, water can grow above the vault level. Water can seep in, and that's why we don't build basements in Florida. If that is the case, again, is there going to be a sump pump? Are there going to be oil separators? If water gets into the vault and fluids are stilled, how will employees clean up the vault? That is OSHA standards. You cannot have oil on the grounds. How is the oil to be collected, stored, and disposed of? Is there an on-site facility, or will they pump it out daily? On the tire and repair side, the facility where all the fluids and hazardous materials such as brake fluids, antifreeze, and battery acid, how will that be stored? HHW may not be stored on the exterior of the facility. It must be stored on the interior of the facility. Did they provide in their drawings and renderings a safe storage facility for HHW materials? I did not see one. How will they be disposing of the HHW? That was not included in their TRC notes. What types of items will you use in your dumpster to dispose of? Will rags with grease on them be thrown into the dumpsters? And is that permitted at the county landfill? How will you prevent HHW fluids from running off into the stormwater system? And lastly, will all preventative stormwater drains, such as the ones requested by Danny McArdle, you run into a mechanical separator so that you do not get oil and grease into your stormwater system, so that your facilities can handle all stormwater and wastewater from this facility? Your applicable ordinances 3.02.05, C and H were provided as well. That is all I have as far as statements. I would like to ask the engineer and the developer some questions at this time, if that is permissible.
What particular questions do you have?
I would like to know if they received any notifications from FDOT that may give them the appearance that the easements may be needed as part of the expansion project. Did they receive any information or knowledge from their engineer, who also works on FDOT projects and may have other information as a Bay County commissioner that would let them know as part of the PD&E where that expansion of the right-of-way would occur? And were there any discussions during the development of this on how much money they could make if this had to be torn down because they knew the right-of-way would need that space for this?
Thank you. This time I'm going to ask Miss Amanda to come up. And I just have one question for her in regards to the testimony that we just received. And the question simply is, of course, we've heard many assertions that there were requirements that have not been met for this development order application. So simply, have all the requirements been met for this development order application?
The development order application stage, yes. Some of the things that were brought up were things that weren't possible to get a hold of because the trees didn't exist anymore, or they're building department things that will come up later at building department review when they submit their actual building plans to the building department.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Carroll, would you like to respond to?
Yeah, I mean,
is there any other sworn testimony?
And, you know, and again, I mean, the next step would be the affected parties. And so, again, there's no hard and fast rule, but if you're basically in the immediate adjacent area and want to present sworn testimony, then you'd be an affected party so they could speak just like the last gentleman did.
Right.
Once
Now-
that's done, we can just have general public comment. And obviously, the applicant and the city can do rebuttal once we're done with all that.
Right. Well, I saw Mr. Zach stand up during the time when you actually took the sworn testimony.
There was a few people that did
Okay.
raise their right hand. I know he was one of them. I thought there was a few
All right.
more.
Well, is there anyone else that'd like to share sworn testimony? Yes, sir. We have all day. other than it's almost lunchtime, so.
Live on Rain Tree Place. I've been a resident either on this side or the other side of 390 for almost 40 years. We went through Hurricane Michael. I had 8 inches of water run through my house. Called the county. They said it's a Lynn Haven problem because the drainage ends up going through Lynn Haven to their pond over there. I called Lynn Haven. They said, all our dishes are clear. We're fine. We're good to go. Okay. Tropical Strong Fred comes along. I get 6 inches of water through my house. Call the same people again. Nothing. This time, though, I called the state. I talked to the head of the DOT. He had the gentleman who is the project manager for Highway 390. He came by and talked to our little street. He assured us that everything they're doing will not help the drainage whatsoever. He further stated a lot of underground pipes and all that, they have no control over. You have no control over. Our ditch, like I said, I live on Rain Tree. There's 4 streets on the east side of Harvard Boulevard. There's a ditch that runs north to south. It drains to the south somehow. I've never seen where it goes. Apparently, it goes underneath the property that this gentleman has bought, okay? He's pulled all these trees out and all that. Have they damaged that? Drain, a little bit of drainage ditch that helps us? I don't know. Do you know? You can't look and see that, but he didn't call for any kind of permits or anything to know anything about that. Okay, so now, you look at the other side of Highway 390, there where the ditch in front of Kirby Woods is. Supposedly, that all ends up over there somehow and then ends up over here on 12th Street. Nobody knows how the hell anything goes over there. Excuse my language. Now he's putting this building up on a corner. Water has come down Harvard Boulevard like it's a river. At least before, you had ground there that soaked some of that up. Now he's going to have all concrete in a building. Water is going to go faster. Retention pond. Where does the retention pond drain? The drain into the ditch that supposedly flows in front of Highway 390? I don't know. I don't see any of that stuff. I do know, though, that it's going to be a heck of a traffic problem because I sit on Harvard Boulevard sometimes waiting 20 minutes to get out to make a left-hand or right-hand turn. Now, I realize 4-laning is kind of a long way off now because it may never even happen. Who knows? Anyway, I don't think it's a good idea putting this business there in a residential area with the possibility of causing more flooding problems. Like I said, I've rebuilt my house twice. Third time, I won't have to worry about it because I'll tear the damn thing down and move, like 2 of my neighbors have done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Additional testimony? Yes.
Truth. I know your eyes are glazed over. I know we've heard a lot of testimony this morning. Really ready to go home. I just want to give you a little input from how citizens feel, how locals feel, and how it affects us. You mentioned a lot of emotion being attached to this agenda item. You mentioned wanting to have a lot more people attend these meetings. And I'm going to tell you why there's so much emotion attached and also why people don't attend these meetings. You also said you would base your decision today on comments from today only. I ask that you take into consideration all the people that showed up Thursday night for this meeting. This room was packed. Also, the emails you have received, because it sounded like you weren't going to take those into consideration. My first thought is 390 is actually supposed to be an evacuation route. And right now, for it to be an evacuation route, it's not a very good one. They mentioned the traffic on that road every day. And the reason I'm actually here, my neighborhood asked me to come. I wasn't going to come, but my 20-year-old daughter, who goes to work every morning, said, "Mom, you have to go. The traffic is awful." She lives 10 minutes away from her job. She leaves 40 minutes early in the morning just to make sure, because she has to get out on 390, travel down East Avenue. Her job is off East Avenue. So that is something that every citizen is trying to tell you. No matter what the studies for drainage, the studies for sewage, the studies for traffic tell you, it's not working. I've seen in our neighborhood when it floods,
not just the flooding, but we see toilet paper floating in our streets, which breaks my heart because you see kids outside swimming. We have drainage ditches. The water can't even properly drain to the drainage ditches for the entrances because of the way they were created. You have to come down into the neighborhood and back up, and the drainage ditches are there. So you can't even get through. I actually had my car stalled out. I had to leave with my daughter. She was 4 years old at the time, on my hip, to walk through the neighborhood to get home because my car had stalled out. I walked through a drainage ditch and home without walking past a ditch. So these ditches don't go anywhere. They just hold water. Residents, 105 Derby Woods Drive, totaled out Kia Sedona from flooding. 168 Derby Woods Drive, have trouble going to work because the road's flooded. 106 Derby Woods Drive, the backyard, the living room has been flooded. Main ditch, 2127 Belmont, floods into the adjacent homes. 2324 Woodhaven Place has had 2 cars totaled out because of flooding. 118 Derby Woods Drive had a car totaled out due to flooding. It was flooded on Santa Anita, which is where my car actually stalled out, and I had to walk all the way through because I could tell the front entrance was flooded, but I was hoping I could get in the back entrance. And so that's a little bit from personal people and things that are happening. It's just not working, the traffic or the drainage. And I know Mr. Carroll, man, he should be an attorney. He has a real good argument, right? He's telling you everything you want to hear and how they did everything they were supposed to do and how they were always going to build on that property. They've owned that property since 2005. There were all some accusations made about other stuff being dumped there. That's some pretty big accusations without something to back that up. But what I want to say here is they haven't always had the idea to build. They've tried to sell the property. I'm starting to think that the reason they want to build is because the letter I received from Florida DOT about State Road 390 East. And it says, the Florida Department of Transportation has contracted with STV and their consultant partners to design improvements to State Road 390 that includes widening the road from 2 to 6 lanes, adding a 6-foot sidewalk on the east side, and a 12-foot shared use path on the west side. Sounds like a lot of the property is going to be eat up. I don't know if most of you know, but here's why citizens get frustrated and don't come to these meetings. Supplies have already been ordered for this job. We feel like our voices are not being heard. All you're saying is they've met the requirements. We meet the requirements too. We've lived there. I've lived there for 16 years. Is it because they've always planned to build, or is this a money game? Because we all know when the state has to pay for property, they pay more for commercial developed property than commercial undeveloped property. And it's your job to be a good stewards of our money and to take what we go through into account. We are paying higher insurance premiums while our politicians allow these insurance companies to leave Florida and leave us without insurance. Our insurances are going through the roof because we're being flooded, hurricaned out, all kinds of issues. So it's your job to be a good steward and think about that. Who pays for that? The middle class. Also, if the state has to buy this commercial property, each one of us end up paying for that. The state just doesn't have tons of money sitting around to buy these properties to widen that road. The taxpayers pay it. And I just think he mentioned a lot of issues based on the recession, the hurricane. What he didn't also mention was the past bankruptcies that Grease Pro has had. Maybe this is an opportunity to recoup some of those losses. So again, our tax dollars come into play. So it's a real hard pill to swallow when you come to these meetings and you hear public commentary and then you still vote, let's go ahead with that. Let's go ahead with that. That's why we stop coming. We don't feel heard. We want to feel heard today. We want you to vote no to this Grease Pro. Even though they're saying things are met, they're not. It's not working for the residents. Thank you. Have a great
Thank you. Is there additional sworn testimony?
If you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. Good morning. I want to thank you guys for a couple things. Number one, opening up in prayer. That was awesome. That was great because, I'm sorry, Mickey Hatfield, 1225 Eisenhower Circle. Thank you for opening up in prayer. That was amazing because I truly believe that each one of you are anointed and appointed by God to look after this city. And I thank you. Thank you for what you do. I don't envy you in this position right now. You've heard legal jargon. You've heard every possible angle that you could have heard. And again, I don't envy you. And I wasn't going to speak this morning, but I came in and I saw something that I want to reflect on for you, just for a moment. When I came in this morning, I noticed something, and that was right outside here. Right outside. City of Lynn Haven mission statement. Progressively enriching our community's quality of life by providing consistent and transparent customer service to our residents. Quality of life. That's what we're talking about. You all, if you guys came to that meeting Tuesday night, you heard the concerns that these people have. You don't need me to tell you. I don't need to go back over all that, the flooding and the traffic. You've heard it. So all I ask you to do is consider that, the quality of life. And just because something is legal doesn't make it right. Thank you.
Thank you. There was a lady that needed to make sworn testimony.
Just like the gentleman spoke, I don't want to go over the flooding.
Give us
because-
your name and address for the record,
I'm
please.
sorry, Judith Lindbergh, 2323 Briarwood Place, Lynn Haven, Florida, and I have lived there for 32 years. I'm not going to go over our concerns about all of that because you know what our concerns are. I will say on my cul-de-sac, the reason my husband purchased that home, I was still living in West Palm, is he went out on a horrendous rainstorm. And he went through neighborhoods, drove everywhere, and he found the house we're living in for sale with not a drop of water flooding any part of that street. Lynn Haven ball fields went up. Sorry. Ever since they went up, now we get flooding. I'm one of the luckier ones at this point. Who knows if this goes in? Where my house, I'm a little higher than most of the people on my cul-de-sac. So while the water comes into my driveway, it has not come into my home. My neighbors across the street, and I forget Hurricane Michael because there's nothing we can do about something like that. That's going to destroy everything. But he has replaced his floors 3 times from flooding. Michael once, the other times just rainstorms. My neighbor at the end of the corner, my son took pictures, which weren't shown here, of on the 9th of September, I think it was September, excuse me, her car completely up to the window of her car flooded. Just a normal rainstorm. The next day they were out on the property doing things. Everything was dry on our driveway. The next day we got more rain. her car flooded again. And um, Mr. Lovett stated all the losses he had from Hurricane Michael. I stand here and tell you, I lived in an RV and my husband for a full year. We lost our back room, we lost our roof, and pretty much everything inside our house. So while I feel sorry for his business having lost things, I lost my home. And so did so many people in this room. So I just ask you to take into consideration what this might do. I'm afraid for my life when I go to pick up my grandchildren at school. I have driven up Harvard, over to 12th, to 389, to a light, to turn back to 390 to go get my kids. My granddaughter's getting her license this week. I am telling her, you will not go out that way. You will go the other way. You cannot go on to Harvard. Try to get out there at 3 o'clock, 5:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. If you live there, you'd know what I say. It's horrible. And I think putting something like that there is just going to create even more. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other sworn testimony, City Attorney?
Elizabeth McLean, 1030 College Boulevard, Lynn Haven, Florida, Maxley County. I actually have more than one property that is adjacent to Harvard Avenue affected, by the current situation and future. Thank you all for hearing us today. Greatly appreciate it. So I'm going to speak on, just hit a couple of points and try to make this quick. The intent to develop, yes, the property was for sale. As far as being a good neighbor, and I do believe that Mr. Levitt's other businesses are handled well. I'm not saying that at all, and I'm not opposed to development, but I do believe in responsible development and well-planned development, and I think we need to consider that. I would hope that each of you, I believe that you agree with me on that. That property, though, has not been well maintained over the years. That's just not true. It was overgrown. There were kids that used to hang out back there. There was a makeshift skate park in it. Multiple times people had to call law enforcement out. There was an old trailer type thing in the back that was there that actually caught on fire one time. Um, so that went on for years. I've lived there for going on 22 years. So I'm very well aware of those things. In that area right across the street, on Harvard, not on Harvard, on 390, what we need to consider is there's a ballpark with families going in and out of all day long, and that is reopened. That has reopened since those numbers that DOT gave. DOT has no current traffic study other than from the cameras on the lights. So they don't have a full traffic study, or at least they told me they don't. And they provided all of their most recent ones, but nothing I would consider recent since everything is reopened. There are 2 daycares, there's a school, there's a church, there are neighborhoods. There are so many families with children in their vehicles. And we have no controlled intersection leaving College Point. None. Main exits are 12th and 389, or where 12th and 12th meet, and Harvard. Once the expansion of 390 comes in, the expansion of 390 comes in, Britton Woods and Derby Woods will both be right turn onlys. We still have no controlled exit out or entrance out of College Point. So that's going to bring more traffic over to those areas. I understand that those plans have not been given the stamp of approval, but you have voted to put the infrastructure in, so you're aware of it. The city's paying money to do that. So you know where this road's going to go, and you also know that the easement for this road is going to go directly through the parking lot of this building. So eminent domain comes into play at that point. And I agree with what the other neighbor said. there's a lot of profit to be made. Is that wrong? That's not for me to decide. That's just what the state does. However, what happens to the building? We're looking at the future. What happens to the business? Do we have something vacant? What are we going to do? Where are patrons going to park? What happens then? That needs to be considered. I do think a workshop that was brought up could be possibly a good idea to look into all of this, not just today, but in that 10-year plan. Understand that the 6 lane is not in the 5-year plan, at least not today, but it is in the 10-year plan. But to pretend like it's not there is irresponsible. It's irresponsible for every single party to do that. And I really hope that you do consider that. Another thing I hope you consider, possibly not directly related to this, is maybe a moratorium on land use change for any properties on 390 until this happens, because at the end of the day, responsible government is something that we are in desperate need of from the top to bottom. It's our money, it's our tax dollars, it's yours and it's mine that go to pay for this. 20 years of lost business for something that we're trying to rush through before the DOT puts their stamp on it. That might be an assumption, and might be wrong for that, and if so, I apologize. But it sure appears that way. The one other thing, I understand that you all don't control HOAs, but when they bought this property, it was under a homeowners association. And from what I've seen, signage on it violates the HOA regulations. Falls under the Derby Woods Homeowners Association. If they have a release from that, I think they need to present it. There's a reason for that. To maintain our property, to maintain our neighborhoods, to maintain the value. The people that live behind them, they're going to get flooded. This is going to be elevated. That water is going to run off into their yards and their home. The ditch on the side of their road is at street level with 2 weeks of no rain. At street level with no rain. The runoff is a serious consideration. Water doesn't run uphill. It's not going to run up into the retention pond. In people can say, oh, it's only 3 or 4 houses. Well, until it's yours. And I think when you're a good neighbor, you don't flood your neighbors. That's possibly, can they build a wall? Can they have a concrete wall surrounding it to stop that? I don't know. I know one of my properties on Harvard had water coming up due to the groundwater level being so much higher. There was water seeping up through the slab. I mean, we have a serious situation, and even though they've checked boxes, but there's a much bigger picture, and maybe it would take a workshop to sit down and go through all of that, or maybe that they would withdraw their request and rework it to be a better neighbor, or to wait until that highway is put in. Maybe wait until the 6 lanes are there, and see what you can do legally that's going to fit on that property at that point, so we don't end up with an abandoned building or to have to then try to change land use for other properties to be able to park, to put parking and drainage and everything else on. Because that's what's coming. And I don't think anybody can honestly deny that. I'm going to leave you with one last situation that happened at the Planning Commission meeting. Other than asking you to put your children and your grandchildren in the car, like I've done. I go through Harvard and 390 twice a day, every day. The bare minimum. Other than, I haven't asked you to, maybe I should. Put your grandchildren in the car like I do. Your children. And use that intersection at 7:30 in the morning, around noon, after school times. Tell me if you feel safe. Tell me if you like that. You won't. Tell me if you want more traffic there. Say you won't. Feel confident of that. So other than that, the only, it's basically the same play that I made to the planning board. At the end of the planning commission meeting, once it was over, I was in the back of the room speaking with someone. And I understand that the planning board members were appointed by you all sitting here. And like I said, I know each and every one of you, and I think you're all good people. I know you are. And I don't think you would agree with what happened. But one of your planning board members, Mr. Neil Jones, who I had not met before, at least I don't think I had, sought me out. Instead of exiting, he came over to me at the back of the room. I did not see him go to anyone else. He came to me. He walked up to me in an extremely stern voice with a pointed finger, told me, quote unquote, "You'd better be careful before you offend volunteer." Now, what Mr. Jones might not be aware of, but I believe that every one of you up there are, I have volunteered countless hours to the city of Lynn Haven, and I will continue to do so. So I told him at that point, I responded to him, and I said, "You need to be careful offending citizens." He was acting as a representative of the city of Lynn Haven when he did that. This was not personal. He was acting as a representative of the city of Lynn Haven. He turned around, he walked back to me as opposed to walking out the exit, pointed his finger in my face and said, "You'd better watch out." Now, I don't know what he was threatening. I don't know what I need to watch out for. I don't know why he chose me, but it was unacceptable. And I want to know what member of you all sitting up there today are going to address this with him. I'm not asking for him to be removed. I think he possibly was emotional. I don't know why. But it was unacceptable. And it was not in the best interest of the city. And I don't believe that any one of you would agree with what he did. And I don't think any one of you would have behaved in that manner either. But he did. Like I said, I'm not asking for his removal. But I think somebody needs to let him know that this is not how you represent the city of Lynn Haven, and this is not what we do to our public volunteers or citizens by any means.
Thank you. This time we'll move on to the public commentary portion. Is there any public commentary? Public commentary is limited to 3 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record.
Jody Moore on Amherst Street. Just a comment. I guess Amanda forgot to tell you that the planning board voted 4-3 against this project.
We discussed that on Friday. Thank you. Or on Thursday. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marlene Mahoney. I live at 1808 Britton Lane, which is off of Britton Road, which runs parallel to Harvard, and we have traffic problems. But as what I want to say, a positive note to Mr. Lovett is the noise. I like my solitude. I like a quiet neighborhood. And since Hurricane Michael, I can hear the trains down from downtown. I worry about noise. I know that I'll hear your business at my house. I don't know if you've ever had a family member or a friend that has gone through cancer and they've gone through chemo and radiation and they're very tired and they sleep a lot during the day. They want quiet. I've gone through that, so I understand what that needs. So when you're building a business or you're doing something in your life, you look at it globally. How is what I'm doing affecting the world around me? My neighborhood, me personally. So I don't know what else to say. I think everybody said it all. Flooding, yeah, we got that. Traffic, more than we need. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there additional public commentary?
Hi, my name's Colleen Whitehead. I live at 3124 College Boulevard. My house is on the corner, the southeast corner of 12th and Harvard. I have seen the traffic increase. I witnessed my first accident there. There's no traffic control on Harvard. I have also seen cars do U-turns at the end of Harvard trying to get onto 390. They give up, they do a U-turn, they come down and they shoot down 12th. Speeding is getting kind of prepared, but not. Noise pollution. Ever heard a lift go up and down? Car lift for work? Have you heard an impact wrench? Go hang out at the Firestone, you'll know what the noise is. Air pollution, exhaust fumes, the engine's running. This is all going to be on the corner. You have to drive down that street. Traffic, I covered that. So now you're going to put a paved parking lot into an area that already has drainage problems. Tear down the trees. Drainage is going to get worse. I've seen kids waterboarding down Harvard Street when it rains, just rain. Is what a hurricane would do. He mentioned his hours of operation as being 8 to 6. One in Chipley is going to be open 7 to 5. His car wash is open on Sundays from 8 to 6. On a Saturday morning, you're going to be trying to have a cup of coffee in your backyard and you're going to be hearing air impact wrenches from 8 to 4 on a Saturday. Is that what you want to listen to on a Saturday morning? I don't. And like the previous lady said, you can hear the train from our house. I couldn't hear it. I've lived there for 26 years. In this house, I don't want to have to drive by a mechanic's shop. I'm all about cars. I love my cars. I'm all about taking care of them. Does it have to be in our backyard? Not in his backyard. It's in our backyard. And I know it's a city thing, and kind of an odd property because it's bordered by a state highway and a county area. No, I was approached about Lynn Haven trying to annex more communities into the city. I don't think this is the step in that direction. This will turn off a lot of residents in that whole point. City, if you approve something like this, it destroys home values, it destroys our community. Not in a year, but I know your objective, ordinance 858, you're going to reduce existing conflicts between residential and commercial land use. That was approved 10/26 of '06. I don't think this is the step in that direction. Thank you for your time. I hope you think about everyone said here today.
Thank you. Additional public commentary?
Good afternoon, everyone. Zach Detweiler, 1600 Harvard Boulevard. I wanted to public comment so that I can say things that I would not say under testimony. It is my belief that this development was created to max out as much as you can fit onto a parcel. Squeeze every little piece of item that you can fit to make as much money as you can off a property. And I don't fault anyone for trying to be an entrepreneur. What I fault is when you understate the amount of impact that it's going to have. You understate your inputs, as I testified, to make it seem like it's going to be smaller than it really is. And when you do those sorts of things, it is an untruthful process, both with the city, with the residents, and things like that. And that's what you here today are to decide. Whether or not they were misstating untruthful, maybe misleading about their intent, calling it an office building, it's really retail, saying that they had enough stormwater, maybe they didn't. Things like that. When you hear about the flooding and you go, well, if the inputs were misstated, is it possible that it could flood over the berms now because they don't have enough stormwater retention? And if that is the case, then every single one of them have a point when they say this could impact me. Are the numbers 100%? Are you sure, if you approve this today, that the numbers are 100%? And if you aren't, and you approve it, and something happens to them, where do we go from there? If there was digging in the easement and nothing was done by the city to make sure that every single one of those pipes, including your own municipal pipes, are intact, are you sure when you vote yes that this did not impact the city and its residents? Is this going to cost you money in the long term because of things that they did to this? And finally, if this is an attempt to squeeze everything they can on, because they were really willing to pull that office building off real quick. They were really willing to add more parking real quick. Most people that I know that do a numbers game and find out exactly how much money they need to make to pay off loans and to figure everything else out onto a property to make it a profitable venture will not pull things off immediately if they don't know that there's a longer game for payoff. And that's something that you should consider. Were they misleading in their efforts to the city in order to squeeze everything in for the long game? Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil Atzett, 233 Harvard Boulevard. Prior to the annexation of these properties, they were Bay County neighborhood commercial. Now, I looked for any property in the city of Lynn Haven for neighborhood commercial, and I didn't really find any. I didn't do 100%, parcel by parcel, but I believe when this property was transferred to the city of Lynn Haven, maybe they just dropped the neighborhood part. They didn't realize. I looked at land use map, 100% around these three parcels is Bay County residential. Okay, the drainage easement is labeled Bay County residential. So if we just count that, we end up with 80% because of the Club for Kids, which is to the south. Okay, and that is a development that is allowed in a neighborhood commercial type property. Auto repair and auto washing are not allowed in a neighborhood commercial property. Now, the comprehensive plan states the city shall reduce existing conflicts between residential and commercial land use and ensure compatibility of new developments with existing and planned uses in order to preserve existing housing stock and to protect neighborhoods from degradation caused by intrusion of non-residential uses. The city shall ensure that commercial, industrial, and other non-residential uses do not create an undue negative impact on established residential areas. One of the biggest negative impact that I see is dumping all the traffic out of this development onto Harvard Boulevard, right at the intersection of 390. Already heard everybody has problems getting out and in, right? Commercial businesses generally developed on arterial roads. Then put the traffic in and out of the arterial road. Don't just dump it into a residential area. Okay? You've already heard, and you have emails of everybody, concerns on the negative impact. But that is the biggest thing, the negative impact that this development will have. So I urge you not to approve the development order as it is written now because of these negative impacts.
Thank you. Additional public commentary. All right, that concludes our public commentary portion of the quasi judicial hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I think if the applicant wants to rebut anything, he can have an opportunity for that. Otherwise, we can close the public hearing portion and deliberate.
Robert Carroll, we'll be brief. I know everyone is hungry and ready to come out of this meeting. I think it's a lot longer than any of us ever anticipated. Gentleman got up here and spoke a minute ago and said misleading. He obviously doesn't know me. He doesn't know my character, my name. My name is at stake here. I take that with a lot of pride. It hurts me that someone would make that accusation. I have not had any conversations with DOT about taking of property or any profitability. I would never associate my company, my partner's name, and our firm on misleading anyone to steal public funds in that way. That would be illegal. That is nothing that I would ever associate myself with. And I want to make that perfectly clear on the record. If there were anything of that going on, I assure you I would disassociate myself from that project. I've known the Lovetts over 30 years. We first met at Cook Memorial Baptist Church. That's where I met them. That's the history that I have with them over 30 years. I've never known them to be misleading or do anything. So I want to set that straight to begin with. In regards to the drainage, I am a licensed professional engineer. I did the drainage reports. I evaluated the drainage, wholeheartedly believe in it. I wouldn't have put my seal on it, which is the responsibility that I have as a registered professional engineer. It's been reviewed by multiple professional registered engineers. So to say that we haven't input the data correctly, I take offense to that. We've done this. We've been in business almost 30 years. We've done projects, an abundance of projects here in the city of Lynn Haven that are around this area. So, and I'm not aware of any drainage problems that any of our projects have caused in the past. Was brought up about ADA compliance. I assure you it will be ADA compliant. Your back parking lot right behind you, you have to walk through the parking lot, cross a roadway to get to the area to be able to come up. It's the same kind of scenario. You'll be crossing the drive aisle to come to the building. We will have a place through the building. We will 100% always be ADA accessible. We've done multiple grease pros. We work for competitors that do the same exact type of facility. We permitted these in Walton County, Destin, all over the place. So we've done multiple of these. We're not going to do anything that's not ADA compliant. Regarding the vault in the building, he's done a lot of homework and a lot of research, and I appreciate that. These are not just permitted. You just can't go build whatever you want. There are rules and regulations on how you comply, how you have to build it. It has to be waterproof. We're not going to build anything that's not going to be waterproof. It's going to be a maintenance nightmare. So all of that we handled. If this gets approved, the next step is the building permit. So then the building department will be evaluating every bit of it to make sure it complies with the building codes. He's regulated by the state. So he has a laundry list of inspections. I would welcome the gentleman. He can come and tour any of these facilities. The Lovetts would open their door and he can come and visit any one of these to make sure they're in compliance. They wouldn't have been in business since 1985 had there been compliance issues. So just want to stress that. Mr. Lovett, he's got a few things just to rebut, but end of the day, don't have a code. We've developed the code. No, the neighbors are not happy or pleased about this project. Site is commercial, has been commercial. We're not asking for a land use change, a variance, a deviation, none of those. We were willing, because we heard the testimony last week about how upset everyone was, to take the office building off. But if y'all don't want to take the office building off, that's fine. We can leave it. That's not something that, we take lightly. I mean, it is an expense that, profit they won't have on rent or occupy it themselves. However, we were willing because we heard. We did hear. We listened. So that was from their side willing to come to the table and said, okay, we will reduce this scope of the project.
I'll be very quick. Aaron Lovett. I've had people wanting to purchase this piece of real estate over the years. And from time to time, I've had enough interest that I let my daughter, Patrice, who is a realtor, I would let her put signs on it to see if it would return a significant profit. Some people talk to me in detail about it. Some would back away. Some didn't want to pay what I wanted for it. That's why you would see it for sale from time to time. That was it. We did have people inquiring and asking about it. In terms of the DOT, it is my understanding from the sources I've talked to with the DOT and people I deal with, that whether it's a 4-lane or a 6-lane hasn't been totally determined yet from Highway 77 to 231 on 390. Whatever it's going to be, it will be done on the south side of the highway. It will not impact my property at all. I have been told that. And from a very reliable source, Joe Fixel, who helps me with other stuff I had to do, he fights with the DOT all the time. But he has told me, Aaron, that the project is going to the south. It's not going to impact you on the north side. The letter that everybody received, I've got the letter. The way I interpret the letter, it says they're notifying me that we're going to be in your area. We could be on your property doing surveys of the roadway. If you see somebody there, that's what it's about. It's a courtesy letter letting me know that they're going to be in that area working and surveying. The lady brought up that she saw where Grease Pro went through a Chapter 11. Yes, I did. After the recession was over, in probably 2009 or 2010, it was tough coming out of that thing for me. It was hard. It was tough. The debt I had I became unsustainable. So I filed Chapter 11 with guidance from a law firm. They walked us through it. It took 2 years to go through it. My debt was restructured. I did not have any debt taken away. It was just restructured where it was more affordable. And we got back on track. And it took a number of years to get back on track again. Then by the time I'm there at 2018 with Hurricane Michael happens. The other issue is the water oil separator. My site will have a water oil separator in that lower bay area, that basement area. That basement area will be waterproof. We know how to build it where water doesn't come in. It will be down in the ground. Water will come up, but it will not be able to come inside that basement. It's waterproof. Last thing, I lost a lot of buildings. I also lost my house in the storm. My roof came off my home. My wife and I had to leave, and I moved 5 times before I could get a house built to move back into. So I understand what it is to be displaced. I want to be a good neighbor. I agreed with Robert. Let's take if you want to call it a retail or an office on that east end, because I just want to operate my business. And if we take that off and it makes the people happy, that's what we were trying to do. I'm not trying to take advantage of anybody, or I'm not looking for the DOT to do anything. We just want to put up a store. Thank you.
Thank you. Closing the quasi judicial hearing at 11:55 p.m. All right, this time, any discussion from the commission?
Just if I can interject, I know Commissioner Warwick had mentioned maybe I'm not trying to phrase it. I mean, obviously we're in a hearing, need to make a decision. I think the only really option, if you wanted to continue this hearing and do something like that. However, we got to remember it's a quasi judicial hearing, so you need to base your decision on the sworn testimony that's given. So unless, this is continued and you get somebody from the county who's willing to come, give sworn testimony at a workshop or continued hearing or whatever you want to call it, it's going to make it difficult to again base your decision on the sworn testimony that you hear at the hearing. So I understand, a work, whatever you want to call it, postpone this, hear from other sources, whatever, that is well and good, but unless it's sworn as part of the hearing, you can't really use what you hear, to base your decision on this development order, whether you approve it with conditions or deny it.
How did we do it with the other one? When we did,
I think we did just that. We adjourned or postponed the hearing and then continued it to come back at a later date, if I remember right.
Yeah, we just didn't have the hearing that day.
That wasn't a quasi judicial hearing that before they did the workshop.
I can't remember if we even started it. You know what I'm saying?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to see if there's anything we can do, and I think something we can work together on to kind of just alleviate some of the problems that could possibly arise, or maybe even help the residents out. That's all I was trying to do by having a workshop.
I mean, I think the feedback we've gotten has been traffic and flooding are the two major issues, and possibly property value, but traffic and flooding are the two major issues. So that would be something that we would have to consult with state and county about to even help try to resolve that. Now, with them having 100-year stormwater plan, hopefully that would help alleviate some of the flooding that's going into the area by it being on the corner there. That is going to absorb some of the water that's going to be flowing down Harvard, that it should intake some of that by them adding the 100-year stormwater plan there. So that should help alleviate some of that. But from the flooding and the traffic issue, again, it will be consulting with the state on Highway 390 and then also talking with the county because this is not City of they're not in the city of Lynn Haven. So Derby
Right.
Wood, most of College Point is not in the city of Lynn Haven. So we can't go in and fix their stormwater or flooding issues because they're not residents.
Get
So
that.
they were already having flooding before this even came about. So if there was already flooding there prior to, then we would again need to talk to the county and talk to the state. And so we have talked with the county, and in talking with the county, they do say they clean out, the culverts or the various ditches that are there. Then we're doing our part to clean out whatever we're supposed to clean out. Um, so yeah, there are parts there that do flood. I've driven over there recently to look at some different houses that are there in the area, and so there are some there that do retain the water and do have some flooding. But the question would be, what could we do about their traffic and their flooding?
Right.
'Cause the only control, if we use the word control, that we have is over this particular parcel that's in the city of Lynn Haven, and so the other parcels, are not. So that puts us in a quagmire.
I know.
Um,
That's why I asked, with the workshop, if we had someone from the county there to answer some of the questions on stormwater. And I know there's a lot of statements and questions that have come up that I'm like, I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't know the answer to all those things.
and I
Some of the stuff I've been able to decipher and be like, no, that's actually not true because there are some things that happened afterwards, not before, of some of the things that were stated.
I guess in regards to stormwater, again, they're per our code, they're required to not create any more stormwater issues than what are already there. Um, Now, in all, I guess, in all reality, we won't know if that's the case until it's actually built.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying that you don't have good schematics and that you haven't done a good job of that. We really won't know if that's the case until it's built. I mean, we've learned that with stormwater over the past few years. We don't know if this is improved until the storm comes in and is actually built. However, what we've done in the past is if someone has built something, whether it's a neighborhood, a business, and it's caused more stormwater for the previous neighbors or the residents around it, then we've gone back to that engineer, gone back to that company and said, hey, this is what we've required, is that you don't create more stormwater for your residents. It's created, or for your neighbors, it's created more stormwater. So we're going to need you to fix and address that particular issue. And so we've done that. And you've been a part of those projects as well several times where we've gone out, and some of them are still ongoing,
Right.
but we're going out, providing those corrections. Cameron's Crossing was one of those where, Andrew's plantation was built. Once we went out and saw that it was causing more stormwater issues, stormwater runoff on Cameron's Crossing, we followed back up with engineers, developers, and then what was the city's responsibility for our part? We went out, we took care of our responsibilities, talked with them about taking care of some things, and from my understanding, Cameron's Crossing has not had that issue since then. And so I know we're still working on some things with Andrews Place and Mowood Highlands. However, until it's built, we won't know if it creates more stormwater. But then there's that liability, and then it's our part for accountability to be able to go back and say, hey, we need you to fix this because this is what we're requiring, and this is what you said it wouldn't do, but this is what it's doing. So I guess one of the things of us being responsible is making sure that more additional stormwater is not added to the ongoing issue that they're already having, is one of the things that we could do from a responsible perspective. Commissioner Perno?
I was just, based on today's testimony, we just heard that they'd be willing to remove the 3,000 square foot building. And Mr. Carroll had mentioned that they would look at the possibility of doing the egress in and out on 390. And then that would take the in and out off of Harvard, basically. Or I don't know, that's a question, but wouldn't that be a viable solution or outcome to some of the concerns of the citizens for the traffic? So we might be able to address that here. Now, the other question is, does that warrant them having to resubmit another development order?
No, I mean, as far as if they get you can approve the development order either as presented or with conditions, or you can deny it, right?
Okay,
So if they've offered a reduction, you know, if it's just making the building disappear, no other, you know, changes, then you can approve it with the condition that
I think the building disappearing is one thing, as
I'm not
far
sure
as
that we had a
impervious
commitment
square
on the.
footage. But the deal breaker, I think I'm seeing and hearing with some of the citizens is the fact that they don't want the in out on Harvard. They'd rather have it on 390. And if this works, this is one of the major issues for you guys that we can work together with if we can make something happen in out on 390. Now, would we have to continue to another time for this, or is this something that we can get you guys to commit to and then have that brought to us, or does that go to the permit phase? Again, just a question. I'm trying to be a little go between here and make everybody happy. But you know, when you're trying to make everybody happy, nobody's happy. You know.
I mean, we might need Amanda or Robert to answer that, because I know obviously the curb cut permit on Harvard is approved by the county, and then the one on 390 is approved by the state. So
Just from the testimony today, we just heard that there's willing to be a concession and a try at this, and I see heads nodding that they'd like it.
I'm thinking that maybe Bobby needs to speak to this because he's the infrastructure director. But part of me thinks that if they're going to change, if they're going to change the site plan, removing a building is one thing. But if they're actually going to change the site plan, then
Yeah.
there's some other things that are going to shift because of that, with the
Trust me,
access and
I'm just
everything.
asking. You
So
don't have,
that might need to have an come back for the development
Right.
order again. But I'm not sure. I'd rather defer to Bobby on that one, if that's okay. Oh,
he's just in a suit. That's all.
Mr. Baker, if you'll come up and address that for us, please.
not on Harvard, would we need a whole?
Well, I feel like it could be conditional, but on 390, you're probably only going to get a right in, right out. And I would think you'd want two entrances, you know, you don't want them to come back on 390 and then have to go back down Harvard if they come off Harvard. So having two entrances would be ideal. Right? This makes more sense to have one on Harvard. Or both. So they could go either way.
Please, no comments from the audience at this time. Thank you.
They were able
I think they could just resubmit the site plan portion of it.
yeah, I think it would
There's
just be like
nothing
it
else.
would just be like an amendment,
Yeah, it would be an amendment, yes.
right? But that's if you guys want to condition it on them only having the 390 in and out. And I'm not sure if
This-
that's even possible.
This is the type of stuff I was hoping to talk at the workshop.
I mean, the bottom line is, I mean, the application is Harvard and 390, so that's what's in front of you.
Right.
You know,
All right. Any other discussion?
So if I understand it right, we can make it so that the quasi-judicial hearing is ongoing, right? And do a workshop and then readdress this at the next commission.
and
the
again, I
po-
mean, doing a workshop, it's tough because you're in a quasi-judicial hearing, so you need to base your decision on what sworn testimony, what competent and substantial evidence you guys heard. So if you go out and
Yeah, so doing the
get people
workshop.
from the county, I mean, that's just gonna, I would think, cloud anybody's, judge. It may help you, but it's not going to, unless they're willing to come to a continued hearing and give sworn testimony, whoever they are. I'm not sure who at the county would come do that.
just not even about the county, just what we're talking about here. I mean, you guys would need time to take a look at the in out on 390. Uh, and then hopefully, it would show even more of a sign of being a good neighbor that you would want to do that, and we could hopefully get a small amends going there. And then the stormwater, I mean, we didn't even mention that city manager had emailed all of us the stormwater map, so how things flow, and we know that, but do they know that? And that might be something that we could share with the people of the people concerned right
I
now.
think Commission or Mr. Carroll actually talks about the flow of the
Did
stormwater.
we look at the map, the county map that was emailed to us?
We did not
Day or two
display
ago.
that, but he made reference to it. All right. Any other additional discussion, questions, anything, Commissioner Vandegrift?
Well, now that you've asked, comprehensive plan makes reference to no undue negative impact. And from what I've heard today, the two areas that the citizens are concerned about negative impact is the flooding and traffic. Now, the solution that Commissioner Perno proposed might help with the traffic. But I think a statement needs to be made that the building of this facility will not substantially impact the flooding in that community. Can someone make that statement?
Well, that's the requirement for them actually building the building, is that they can't have any substantial or any additional flooding or stormwater to the area.
And that's what I just wanted everyone to hear.
Yeah, so yeah, that's the requirement when you build in the city of Lynn Haven, that we're requiring you not to impede upon your neighbor, that you maintain your own stormwater, that you would do that. And as we've seen, at least in the past 3 years, if that's not being done, then we go back to engineers, developers, and ask them to make adjustments to make sure that that's being done. So I guess to put this in practice, if we approve the development order, this is built, and then 2 years later, residents come and say, hey, there's flooding on our property. Whoever the commissioners are, city manager is at that time, goes to the owners and developer and engineer and say, hey, we're having this issue. We're not supposed to have this issue when you build when you build new property in the city of Lynn Haven. Can you fix this particular issue? And so yeah, they're not supposed to impede upon their neighbors with additional stormwater issues. All right, Commissioner Peoples, anything?
Yes. So I guess is a question for the attorney is, so there really is no true way to like table this vote?
You can
Because like, for
con-
me, I understand,
continue and adjourn the public hearing to a date certain.
like,
Now, the purpose of that, again, unless it's because we need more people to come testify at the continued hearing, if they're willing to do it, obviously, I mean, it's not a courtroom, it's a quasi judicial hearing.
Yeah.
We don't have subpoena power or anything, but if there's some additional testimony that we think we need to hear so you guys can make a decision, you can continue and adjourn this to another date certain and see if you can get whoever you're talking about to come and testify to help you with your decision. I mean, that's pretty much it.
okay. Because, I mean, my opinion is that we've had, at least since I've been here, the most input from all parties involved since I've been here, and it's a lot to reflect on, and like, even if it's only stuff that's said today, we have recordings of this meeting that we can go back, rewatch, reflect on, and make an accurate decision. I mean, there's so much information at one time. To truly like vote on it confidently is kind of hard to do, because you got both sides making excellent points. You got, well, three sides really. We've got three different parties involved here, and they're all making excellent points. Like, it makes sense to table it, reflect on it, think about it, and make a vote then. To just make us a vote just because we've been here for 3 hours and want to go eat lunch doesn't seem like that's giving the planning commission that voted no on it.
I think they approved it 4-3.
No, they
Negative.
denied
They
it.
denied it 4-3. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm for it.
It's not doing. I just don't feel like if I vote today, it's going to feel like I'm voting because we're just trying to vote rather than making the right decision.
And
So
the,
can-
yeah, the only thing if that's the route this board decides to do, I mean, the only thing I'd caution you on is, again, the ex parte communication type stuff. So, I mean, it's presumed president. So if you just go home and reflect on this for a week and don't want to vote on it,
Well,
are you going to not, hear input from other people? Then you're going to have to come back here and say, well, yeah, I heard X, Y, and Z, but I'm not really basing my decision on that. So then, why wait a week? That's my only thing. It's just going to open the door for ex parte communications and outside communications that weren't heard today.
How about this? How about out of all the statements, questions, everything that were made, I forget what the term was, we extend the
Continue.
quasi judicial hearing
Continue.
until we get answers on all those questions and statements that were made, whether it's by the engineering firm, why it's by the city, whoever needs to answer those questions. Is that viable option?
Do you have specific questions?
Like there was stuff that was brought up about the vault. There was stuff that was brought up about.
No, that was addressed. So they addressed.
Right.
So when the engineer and the owner came up, they did address the major questions from, DOT expansion to the vault to being waterproof to
The
storm
permit
water.
only being good for one plot, which we know is not true because we asked Charles that and he said it was for all three plots. All those things.
Now those questions wouldn't pertain to the development order application though, because that is something that was prior to this. So
Mhm.
that will be for the cleaning of the property, which is a separate issue than what we're dealing with here in regards to the development order
I
application.
get it.
So
I mean, I get that that's not going to be something that going to change your mind whether to approve the development order or not. But it's nice to just know that we know and the residents know what the answer is on that. That's all.
is there someone that can answer that question? I mean, if Charles has already answered it, then we have the answer. I mean, you just gave us the answer for that.
Yeah.
There's
Because we asked Charles at the Thursday pre-commission meeting. He didn't know at the specific time, and he looked it up, and he was like, "Yeah, that was for all three plots."
Okay, so we have the answer.
I mean, I haven't even gone through the whole thing because I didn't even know that we got that email last night and the whole thing. So I was like, and I started looking at it going, "Oh my gosh, there's a lot of stuff to digest just in this short amount of time." And I wish I had gotten that earlier so I can go through all that. That's what I'm getting at.
And every question may not be able to be answered. And in listening to the questions and going through the email, is every question relevant to the development order application
It's
and the
not.
actual business itself? So so from what I've heard today, questions were asked. Mr. Zach asked specific questions. There was a response to those specific questions and other questions that were asked. There was a response to the questions and assertions that were made during the planning commission commentary as well. So I think from a question answer perspective, I think we've received sufficient response to the various questions that's been asked by the county residents, as well as they've asked several questions. We've gotten responses to those. We've asked several questions. We've gotten responses to those as well. So I guess in line with what city attorney is saying, if we are considering postponing this, then who else would we have to come to try to give us answers to questions? What other official would we ask that would be able to give us any answers to the questions?
There isn't anyone else. You got all the parties involved.
Well, there is one, and this is just to protect everyone involved, period. This is not saying anyone's trying to do anything just to protect the city, to protect the developer, to protect the citizens, is the question about if 390 is going to be expanded on the south side. Because if it is, then bam, answer the question's
But
answered.
I don't think you can make a decision off of that though, can you?
Yeah, and they could change their mind.
Correct. I mean, you're not here to look at the intentions or desires or motives of a potential, DOT taking or anything like that. I mean,
Right.
who knows if that's going to happen? And frankly, it doesn't matter when the application is for development order approval.
Right.
That's what you need to look at. Whether the intentions are, I'm going to build it so I can get, bought out. I mean, that's not for you to decide.
Right.
It's
I
not-
understand that.
So is there a motion to approve the development order application for Grease Pro at 3119 East Highway 390?
I would make the motion on the caveat that they redesign and look for egress in and out on 390. And that's the motion I would make.
So there's a motion to approve the development order application with the caveat that they look into the possibility of making an egress to 390. Is there a second for that?
Is that a condition or just ask them to
Well,
look at
it's
that?
based on its testimony today is that they said they would, excuse me, let me rescind it and remake. I would make the motion that they would omit the 3,000 square foot building and look at, because that's contingent on making the egress in out on 390 according to the words of the engineer.
Okay.
So
All right, so there's a motion to approve the development order application with the amendment of omitting the 3,000 square foot building so that it could be permissible to at the 390 ingress egress. Is there a second for this motion?
I second it.
All right, motion and second. City manager, if you call the vote.
Commissioner Parno,
yes.
Commissioner Vandegrift,
Yes.
Commissioner Peebles,
Not gonna lie, this is a tough one for me, but I guess since we made a compromise, I'll go with yes.
Commissioner Wark,
No.
Mayor Nelson.
Yes, motion passed. Meeting adjourned.